Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and we are live tonight. Let's hope live. Internet, no issues. The last 2 Sundays were very painful. I apologize. Out of my hands, out of my control. I've heard a lot of people say their internet's been glitchy. So far, so good with Tess. Jamie's not joining us tonight. She did hurt her foot, and she's keeping it up and giving it rest tonight, and I don't want her to stress out anymore. And we're trying to keep the internet load down, so Rob is with me tonight, of course. Jamie's going to be watching, of course, and hopefully next Sunday we'll get her back on, and her foot will be better, too. Man, we got a great guest tonight, and that's why, and we got a lot to talk about. We'll get to that, but we have a really great guest tonight. I don't have many guests on with fiction books a lot of times. I do, special ones I really enjoy, and this one I am truly enjoying. It's called Travelers by Donald Altman. He is a psychotherapist and a former monk. He's written over 20 books, but this is his first fictional book called Travelers. Man, I really, really love this book. You guys are definitely going to, if you're into I'm not saying it's like these stories, but it reminds me of certain elements of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King and even Illusions by Richard Bach. Now, this story is nothing of those stories, but man, it has little elements to this. I love this book. I really am into it. We're going to talk about that. And of course, what else can we not talk about? We got to talk about what's going on in the news, right? We're going to get all that in the World Wide Web of Weird. And later in the show, we will take your calls. We will open up the lines, call in and talk to our guest tonight, Donald Altman. I know you're going to want to call in and talk a little bit about the UFO thing going on, but we do have a great guest, and definitely honored to have him on. So we got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup, hopefully a internet glitch-free night. Knock on wood. This is wood. Man, I've had such anxiety today, guys, about this show. Because I'm like, I want this show to go good. Not only because I really love this book by this guest, and I've never talked to him before, but I'm really hoping everything works well because I really like this book. It's called Travelers by Donald Altman. Donald Altman will be joining us after the World Wide Web of Weird. But because of everything going on in the news, all I could think about today is what would Art Bell say? I've seen people post that, and I'm right there with him. What would Art Bell be talking about tonight? I have no Art Bell. I can't cover this. Or Heather Wade. I miss you, Heather. I would love to know what Art Bell would think of all this right now going on. I mean, I have a lot to say on that, and we don't have a lot of time, so we will try to get into some of that tonight. But there's a lot of weird to cover, as always, in the World Wide Web Weird. Joining me, as always, just as weird, and with his own Weird Wednesday show you should check out, is Rob Autry. How you doing tonight, Rob?
Pretty good.
I was like, don't you pull that glitch crap on me again. You did that sound test. Screw you.
Yeah. What would Art Bell do?
Oh, I know, man. All I could think about today was like, man, the commentary he'd have on this and the phone lines, not just him. It's always not just art. It was the show he put on and the people would call in and discuss this stuff going on. It would have been awesome for Art to be around for this. I also got to mention really quick before we go on the World Wide Web, I got to give a plug out for my friend, and also because I enjoy this book. My friend Todd Reinert has published a new book, is a Colors of Horror zombie book. I think he's going to do more, like a Color of Horror series. It's a coloring book for adults. Yeah, both my children are obsessed with zombies, and I'm a horrible parent. And Liam got a hold of this book literally as I was ripping it out of the package from Amazon. Liam stole it out of my hands, and I'm like, dude, it's not for kids. It's not for kids. He wanted to rip the pages. I'm like, you're not ripping the page out. He loves soldiers and he loves zombies, so he picked out this picture. I said, fine, you can color that. Of course, it's coming. Look at it coming through the green screen because he colored it green.
Colored it invisible.
Because he loves soldiers and he loves zombies, and I'm a horrible parent, I know. I mean, there's no nudity in here, but Todd is a brilliant artist. He's been on the show back in the early days. Wish we could get him back on. One day we will. But this is some beautiful artwork in here, and if you enjoy horror, this is definitely up your alley. Get it out on Amazon. I provided the links on the channel. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web, wow. See, now I'm glitching. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, how can we, I'm like flustered, I'm flabbergasted here by all the news of unidentified objects being shot down in U.S. and even now in China's airspace. Of course, right now the article I have here is unidentified object shot down over Alaska by U.S. military. It's developed since then. There's been one shot down over Canada. Remember last week when we talked about the balloon, there was something reportedly shot down in Montana, and I've seen tons of UFO footage coming out of Montana and other places in California. What is going on? For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio channel on the Talkstream Live Paranormal Radio app, we are a webcast. We play out live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch when internet wants us to. Tonight it is, thank God, because man, I could not wait all day to talk about this, and it's a developing story. Oh, add to stream, not remove. Pull it up. All right. So I'm not going to read the articles. You guys are seeing it. I just want to be able to talk about this. So Rob, you didn't get to have a Wednesday show. This was developing then. We've had the Chinese, we talked last week about the Chinese balloon being shot down. One of the big things I didn't even get to cover on that is, Republicans are, Biden to get on top of this. And I agree. I don't like Republicans, but I agree. It was right over Montana, Malmstrom Air Force Base there. We're talking like 3 major radar installations there that are part of NORAD that are really protecting our airspace. If you're going to hit somewhere, that's a place in Montana. So it should have shot down before then. So now the Biden administration said, we're going to shoot everything down that comes in the sky now. We're going to shoot it all down. Watch really quick. Now if you're an alien, you better stay out of our airspace, I guess, because we're gung-ho. That's how politics works. Sorry, aliens. That's the thing. Is this aliens? Rob, what's your thoughts before I give mine?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't have a clue. I watch the news and I'm just like, I just turn the channel because I can't believe anything they say, and I just don't have a clue anymore.
or I got to do my best Trump impression. It's China. I can't do Trump.
China.
But China. How you said it, whatever. Well, they shot down one reportedly. I got a story here. China claims unidentified object in its airspace, prepared to shoot it down. Supposedly, they shot it down. Is that one of our things now that they're shooting down? Is it, this drone technology we're not aware of? The Canadian, we haven't given much identification of what was shot down over Alaska. But the Canada press briefing, their defense minister, she said it was cylindrical.
Yeah. See, that's the thing that gets me is they've shot several of these things down now, but nobody has definitely said what it is that they've gone out and found.
You've seen the headline or the reports. Some pilots said it was shattered into pieces, and I don't know what pilots who are talking, because I'm sure they're all being told you were not going to tell anyone or talk to anyone about this as soon as they land. I gotta say, is they've been using F-22 Raptors. Those things are 15 years old or whatever. A lot of money was spent on those. Not been used for much. We have a military-industrial complex that's loving this right now, as much as they're loving the whole Ukraine shenanigans and the show going on there. They are loving this. They're looking at dollar signs. I'm just saying there could be some bad actors here, floating up some really weird-looking aircraft that are nothing more than just to give something our F-22 Raptors a showcase to shoot down, because we spent billions of dollars on these things. And maybe to us to say, hey, don't come in our airspace, China. Now we're ready. We're gung-ho. Or maybe this is a test by China of our air defense systems. Or maybe it's aliens. I don't know. I've seen pictures of the supposed capsule. Looks like the Tic Tac UFO crashed. And it looks like the Tic Tac UFO kind of thing, but more man-made on ice. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that's real. I'm not even going to share that. This is such a developing story.
If there's debris, one of those. Look what's
Project Blue Beam. You're right. Look over here, because we're sticking a boom right up your ass.
Exactly.
Yeah, right up fucking ass.
Wow.
Because you're looking over here at the shenanigans. I don't know. I couldn't tell you people. I don't know. I don't know. It's scary. Something's moving. Something's happening. And it's horrible, because my wife flies for the very first freaking time. You've heard me talk on the show about my wife's fear of flying. She flies for the very first time Tuesday. And I've tried all week not to talk about this stuff, and this story just gets crazier and crazier. And I finally today is broke down and said, "You've been seeing that stuff?" She goes, "Yes."
There's a balloon on the wing.
Oh, she leaves Tuesday, and this is going on. I'm like, this could be the worst timing, for her. Okay, we got to move on. I know there's so much more. We could do a whole show tonight talking about this, but I really do have a really great guest. We're gonna move on, and there's more, because this is obviously not happening just here. We've had 36 countries report balloons or objects in their sky in the last week. British military, this one's from Coast to Coast. British military aircraft, of course, I got the Guardian up here, but the Coast has Tim Binnell, makes a shorter version of the article. British military aircraft reported very close encounter of donut-shaped UFO. Aviation authorities in England have released a report in a curious case where a Royal Air Force base jet nearly collided with a donut-shaped UFO. The odd incident, which was revealed by a local media outlet this past Saturday, is said to have occurred last November over the city of Newcastle during a training exercise involving military transport planes. As their flight was making a turn, crew members noticed what they thought was a drone flying ahead of the aircraft. However, when they passed the odd object, the personnel aboard the jet were left mystified by what they saw. According to the UK Air Prox Board, which investigates such aerial incidents, the mysterious object passed level with the flight deck windows and flew few feet outside the wingtip. This vantage point allowed the crew to get a fairly good look at the anomaly, and they said they described it as dark circular object measuring 2 to 3 feet in diameter with a hole in its center. Although they characterized the object as a drone in the report, the board conceded that the peculiar shape of the craft left them unable to determine the nature of the unknown object. The report went on to note that while they could not identify exactly what the object was, the case was particularly troublesome as the two craft only passed with about a foot of each other. 100 feet is scary. Clutch your pearls, clinch that anus for a pilot. On the tip of your wing, he shat himself. It's Britain, I gotta say shat. I would, being a passenger. Like I said, last thing I want to see is a UFO on a plane. This is why I feel so bad for my wife. Her sister, she's going with her sister. She's gonna have to BA Baracus her, 18, give her some milk, get her to pass out. I was gonna have her take Todd's great coloring book here to draw him, but I don't know if zombies is the greatest thing when you're maybe not. It was a bad idea. I don't know. She likes horror. I don't know. All right, so let's move on.
If these are UFOs coming, if they're legit, extraterrestrials, kind of sucks, because now anything that comes in our sky, we're just going to shoot it down.
Aliens are like, whoa, man, we've been doing this for long time. Why are you shooting at us now?
Yeah. Shoot it.
We can start War of the Worlds. I mean, like I said, there's a big military budget about to be decided probably here in Congress, and this is just great for all those military industrial complex businesses to make a lot of money. Project Blue Beam, I'm seeing people see it's coming. I never know if that's I don't know if Project Blue Beam is going to be real or that's real or not. But it is getting crazy. Let's move on. All right, now we got odd triangular shaped UFO. Hidden underbelly, people. Check it out on YouTube. One of the best for ghost videos, UFOs, anything peculiar and strange. He seems to get the best. And I love his analysis. This is just a little bit of the footage here. Isn't this right? Or Article 3? Should be Article 3, a video.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Yep, that's it. Okay. Bewildered witness Utah captured footage of a mysterious triangular object hovering over Salt Lake City for several minutes. The puzzling sighting reportedly occurred in last September, though the video of the peculiar event only popped up online this week by way of several YouTube channels devoted to serial anomalies. According to the man who saw the strange-shaped UFO, he was in the suburb of Draper when he noticed the peculiar UFO off in the distance, just above the Rise buildings in downtown Salt Lake. Estimating that the object was approximately 1,250 to 1,500 feet in the sky, the man observed that the triangular anomaly initially appeared to be stationary, then proceeded to slowly move north. Go ahead and watch some of this. Yeah, like I said, Hidden Underbelly 2.0 is the YouTube channel I love. I can't wait to see his analysis of. There's a bunch of stuff coming out of Montana right now, UFO stuff. And I saw one weird one from East Coast California today too. There's too much to cover in the World Wide Web of weird. I don't know how well this is going to come through. He has a zoom in, and he's going to go to here in a second of it. This is the original footage from a guy's cell phone. You can't really see it in here. The zoom in is interesting because you definitely can tell it's a triangle-shaped object. Should be coming up here in a second, or maybe was that just at the beginning of the video? Might have to go back to the beginning. I don't know if where I have the zoom in at the beginning or at the end. There. He put a filter on it so you can see. Definitely a big triangle-shaped UFO, and if that's 1,500 feet up, it's probably pretty big.
Yeah.
Stuff is happening, people, in the skies. You know, I'm not saying it's aliens that's getting shot at. I'm not saying that. I have my theories that this could all be, not the trend. This looks like aliens, but all this stuff happening with China and Alaska, over Alaska, the Yukon of Canada, Montana, South Carolina. I mean, there's places, there's a lot. We're going to get to the Chinese lasers at the end of this too. But things are happening. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's get on to some ghost stuff. Actually, let's change because we'll get back to UFO stuff. Everybody's on the UFO thing, but there is some other stuff going on. Coast to Coast AM had this one. An eerie video from Campfire gathering shows a ghostly figure emerged from the darkness and dashed into the flames. The spooky scene was filmed last month by Erica Gestat Paris, who subsequently shared the unsettling footage on TikTok and declared that, "I got chills watching this." I agree. In the video, her dog seems to be looking at something approaching the backyard campfire, though whatever it was that captured the animal's attention cannot be seen. When Perry's camera follows this creature's line of sight and passes over a pile of logs, the distraction is seemingly revealed in the form of a small figure that suddenly emerges from the darkness beyond the woods and scrambles into the fire where it vanishes. Go ahead and watch. I hate TikTok, but man, some of these videos do end up being really good, and I think this is a good one. I don't think this is shenanigans. You'll see like a little figure walk right through the smoke. And this is my zoom in. I have a zoom in I do of it. There. I mean, it looks like a little child walking into a figure of a child walking into the fire. I don't know what that could be. And yeah, you see the dog's reaction. Yeah.
What the hell?
You can see the legs, the arm movement. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think she caught a ghost. I think that's some incredible footage. Like, we're all on the UFO topic, but man, I have some good ghost stuff tonight too. This is a good one. Coast to Coast AM, Tim Binnell has his article. I don't remember the original article came from, but you can watch that on the YouTube channel. Let me see. Hold on. You can find it by Are You Afraid is the name of the YouTube channel. But this is I think some really good footage. Too bad it's on TikTok though, but it's on YouTube. You can watch it. All right, let's move on. We're going to run out of time. We got so much to talk about. All right, next one, ghost one. This one, I don't know if this is a ghost, but man, the way it moves so quick is so creepy. Creepy piece of security camera footage from Peru shows what some believe to be a ghost of a little girl running through a store. The video was reportedly captured last month at a shopping center in the city of Pucallpa, and subsequently wound up being shared on TikTok, of course, where it amassed over 1 million views in just a few days. In the footage, which appears to have been filmed after the store had closed, a small figure can be seen dashing down a hallway between racks of clothing. Go ahead and play it. So this is Peru. Maybe this is a homeless kid living inside the store. Like, people have done this in people's homes. Maybe this kid's found a place to hide in the store. I mean, if you have motion activated alarms, it could get tripped, but there's areas I know in my store you could break into, walk through, and motion activated alarm ain't going to get it. I'm not going to say where. But this one, the only thing peculiar about it is how fast this kid runs through the frame. Super fast. Like Flash. Coast to Coast AM, you can check that out. I want to move on. We've got more to get to before we run out of time. Because I want to get to this last couple things. This thing. I haven't you guys seen this Bigfoot story going around? And I think this originally came from, and my article's loading slow. Hold on. Come on now. Too many stuff open, I think. Let me try. There we go. Another alleged Bigfoot captured on trail cam in Washington State. This came from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization. I love their stuff. Controversial image was submitted to the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization by an individual named Jay Louis, who has been attracting a lot of attention on social media recently. When we lived in Pierce, the house we lived in had a good-sized area of land in the back of the property, she wrote. Me and my husband Tom used to set trail cams for our 3 young kids. We used to get some lovely wildlife and bird shows up. Back in August 2020, we checked the cameras one day and found a photo of a strange humanoid-shaped figure that had been captured by one of the trail cams. Not really sure what to make of the photo. We never showed it to the kids. It's very odd, peculiar looking. Doesn't look like it had hair of a humanoid-shaped figure. Blah, blah, blah. I wonder if it could be some kind of Yeti. Sorry, my throat's getting scratchy. Or a Bigfoot-type being. Sadly, the image itself only seems to show a portion of the creature's upper torso and arms, meaning it is very difficult to make any sort of positive identification. While it could be some sort of animal, it's also possible it's little more than a person wearing a costume and that the image was sent to as an organization as a joke. You know what this possibly could be? AI. There's now, literally, that is the new thing for Bigfoot, I think. We're going to see a lot of AI fakery image. I would want to know, where was that shot? I know it's their backyard, but I need some comparison. I feel like this could be an AI-generated image. It looks very similar to some AI-generated images of Bigfoot I've already seen produced by people.
Yeah.
Maybe it is real, but you see the problem we live in now?
Exactly.
How do I know?
Can't trust.
How do I know? I don't expect people to put their lives out there and say who they really are and do an interview and this is where we take the camera and all that. That would be what would help prove it's not AI to me. Maybe that's something real, but then again, it's a guy in a suit. Land of illusion.
Yes.
It is interesting, but what else can I say about it? All right, now to something that is definitely real. Maybe. I don't know. Project Bluebeam. I don't know. More like Project Green Beam.
Todd says Digicabra.
Digicabra. Thank you, Todd. Copyright Todd Reiner. Digicabra. Digicabra, he came up with that years ago. Check out his book, Zombie Coloring Book. All right. So the last one is China. We're talking about all this in the airspace. What's going on with China? I've been like, China on this show a lot. I'm not a fan of the Chinese government. Love the Chinese people. Hate their government. And I feel they are one of the biggest threats. The biggest threat, though, is people like Carl Schwab and these big billionaires making all these decisions for us. That's a big threat. And I think there are a lot behind what's going on in the global society and movement and war and plagues and everything. I'm not being a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying these people plan out our future to the WEF. I didn't get to cover last week really about what they want to do at the workforce place by monitoring your brain waves. We didn't get to really cover that because of the internet glitches. Wonder why. But the Chinese spy balloon isn't the only mysterious object in the sky these days. Researchers at the National Astronomy Observatory in Japan published and captured by the observatory in Mauna Kea, Hawaii, that showed a set of mysterious green lasers flashing across the night sky. There's video of this. It's not like it looks like this. This is like, I think, a still capture of the laser. The laser literally specks through the sky. It's from space. You know how powerful that laser would have to be?
Yeah.
From space. And why Hawaii? Well, I won't be one of the first places hit if we go to war with China, I'm sure. Things are a brewing. And I don't know if it's Project Bluebeam, aliens, or us just poking each other, us and China and Russia, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust the news. I don't trust the media. I don't know if I'm being played. Is this how you feel, Rob? Whenever you see this stuff?
Yeah. You know, I mean, my gut feeling, you know, I mean, it's something definitely going on. And I think China's got some stuff to do with it. And, you know, who knows? Russia, Ukraine. I mean, there's lots happening out there.
There's a lot happening. There's a lot of people don't understand that's going on in this, with the whole, you know, especially Ukraine. I mean,
yeah. I mean, what we see is just the facade of what's actually going on.
And we got threat of nuclear war being stated by Putin. But we've also saber-rattled. We've saber-rattled. We poked the bear when it comes to Russia.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We funded people in Ukraine to basically bomb the bridge in Crimea, however you say it.
Yeah.
And basically attack them first. And then Russia's like, okay, well, we're going to come in. I'm not defending Russia. They're evil. I can't stand their government or Putin. But I'm just saying there's a lot of complexities to this. And I think a lot of players that are going to make a lot of money off of war. And they want to change Ukraine into this like digital utopia scape, whatever, just so they got to break it first to rebuild it their new world order way or whatever. But there's a lot of major players involved in this. Trust no one. And I'm sure if there's aliens that are here, which I think there are, they are paying attention. They actually obviously have some stake in what's going on here.
You know,
and
as crazy as it sounds, the theory that's always in the back of my head is, you know, we're creating. Our world is creating all this turmoil between this country and that country and this country and that country, and talk of nuclear weapons, I think, draws the aliens to us because they're like, these guys are going to blow each other's asses apart.
Right.
But
why all this? You have the narrative changed. Chinese spy balloon to now unidentified objects. I mean, the Canada over the Yukon, they described it as cylindrical. They didn't say it was a balloon. And they said that's not a balloon over Alaska. So it went from the balloon to this. Why? What is going on? Feel like we're being played. I don't have enough time to talk about this because we have a great guest tonight. His name's Donald Altman. He's going to be joining us to talk about his book, Travelers. I've been reading. I got the I don't have a hard copy of it, but I have the e-version. I feel like an 80-year-old electronic version book of Travelers. I am so enjoying it. I did not finish it. I make that a tradition not to finish the book before the interview because that way I make sure I don't accidentally spoil anything. But I'm almost through this book and I love it. I highly recommend it. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm almost there. I just don't want to spoil it, so that's why I stop myself from doing that. Our guest tonight, Donald Altman, author of Travelers. He's a psychotherapist, former monk. He's author of 20 books. Excellent guest tonight. We'll open up the phone lines later in the show, but let's go ahead and see you in a few minutes.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Cat Hobson, Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, the true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe. 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Donald Altman. Donald Altman is a psychotherapist, former monk, an award-winning author of over 20 books and CDs on mindfulness and spirituality, an international mindfulness expert, speaker and trainer. He has taught over 15,000 mental health clinicians, physicians, nurses, and others how to use mindfulness interventions for depression, anxiety, trauma, pain, and stress-related conditions. Donald served as vice president of the international organization, the Center for Mindful Eating. For many years, he was an adjunct professor in Portland State University Interpersonal Neurobiology program and taught graduate-level classes for Lewis and Clark Graduate School of Education and Counseling. Donald was a senior mental health therapist at both a general psychiatric clinic and eating disorder clinic for 4 years before opening his own clinic outside of Portland, Oregon. He has presented at the National Symposium Conference multiple times. His work has been seen in Psychotherapy Network, Los Angeles Times, and other publications. He has contributed chapters to such books as the Willie Blackwell Handbook of Group Therapy and the 1,000 Hands, a guidebook to caring for your Buddhist community. Donald writes for the Practical Mindfulness blog for Psychology Today and has articles over 600,000 views in the past year. His book, Mindfulness Toolbox, was a 2-time Gold Award winner of the Ben Franklin Publishing Award for both psychology and body and mind spirit categories. The book was a bestseller for Petsy Publishing. His upcoming spiritual novel, Travelers, will be released soon. Actually, it is released, I believe. I've been reading a copy of it. I think it's being released soon. I've been reading it. I love this book. I really, really do. I haven't finished it yet, but that's kind of a tradition of mine because it keeps me from spoiling it. Because I could be really, I don't want to do that. But I'm almost through this book, and I already know I love it. Even sometimes you say that, I love this book, and you get to the end, and you're like, oh, you broke my heart. But I don't think this is going to disappoint at all. And it's a really honor to have Donald onto the show tonight. So let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right. Let's make sure he adds the stream. Fingers crossed. How you doing tonight, Donald?
Hey, Jason. Great to be here with you.
I'm going to give you a pre-warning. The last 2 Sundays have been S shows, basically, of internet problems. So far, knock on wood, we are good to go. And I'll be honest with you, I've had a very crazy last few... February has been a crazy month for me. So I didn't get a lot of time to read your book, but I'm almost through it after just a day or two of reading. And I love it. Yeah. I honestly love this book. You know what it reminds me of, and we'll get into your book and everything, but I just have to say, and I know it's not a book, it's a different story at all, but it gives me the feelings of when I was reading, when I was my 20s, reading Richard Bach's Illusions. If you ever read that book.
No, it's one of my favorite
you should.
books too, yeah.
All right, well, Donald, a lot to talk about tonight. Start out with your background. I gave your bio, but what brought you to where you are now? Basically, how did you get from being a monk to a psychotherapist? Would be a good starter.
Yeah, I became a monk because when we make major changes in our lives, usually because something isn't happening or we're in a lot of pain or struggling in some ways. And that was happening to me. I noticed there was a destructive pattern that kept repeating in my life. And I thought, I had gone to therapy and I had major depression in my 20s, but was really helped by that. But as certain things continued, I wondered, how can I work with this? And there was somebody who said to me, there's a monk I'd like you to meet. And that could be a kind of a cautionary tale, Jason, because I met this monk and I ended up in the monastery. And I don't think everybody has to do that. I thought,
or you end up in a cult after that statement. I'm just saying it depends on the monk. It depends on the monk.
Right. Well, this guy was from Burma. He was a well-known teaching monk in a lineage, Theravada Buddhism, the old school.
Yes.
And so I felt I had a lot of confidence. But I think what happened was I felt this when I met him. I'm from Chicago, and I grew up in the tough neighborhood of Chicago. And when I met this monk, I met someone who I'd never experienced anybody like that on the street corners of Chicago, right? I mean, this guy had this tremendous amount of compassion and availability, and it was palpable. You could really feel it.
I met some monks in Chicago like that. I went to Columbia College and spent a lot of time in Chicago in my 20s.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like they're so peaceful and serene in one of the most violent cities.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're balancing it out. We need that balanced energy there. Yeah. So I found out I could ordain with him. I found out later when this pattern repeated in my life, I found out that I could ordain with him as the head of the monastery. I was actually out in Southern California, near the San Bernardino Mountains, outside of Los Angeles, and they were all Burmese monks there. But it was an amazing experience for me. And it's funny, actually, the first night that I was in the monastery, there must have been the energy, the concentrative power of the monks. I mean, in my 20s, when I had that depression, I started experiencing out-of-body experiences and things that really kind of helped me say that, this depression I'm in, it feels oppressive on me. I'm heavy, I'm weighed down. I don't know how I can get out of this. I'm mired in this condition, this situation. And yet, having that experience of what I really have come to think was experiencing my life energy, and it was connected with out of body experiences, and then also with, I think, which were past lives that I would see very vividly. But it gave me a sense in that moment that, hey, I'm more than just this situation I'm in. It's lousy, it's bad, but there's another way. I'm bigger than this. We all are. And so that gave me, and that experience was interesting because it began with this almost like a vibration, imagine a freight train roaring through your head. And I thought I couldn't, contain the energy of that vibration. I thought it was just going to, explode my brain or whatever.
Right.
But I, something in me said, just let it be. It's normal. Just watch it, be open to it. And when I was open to it, then, I had all these visions, and I later learned that I could move this energy, and I came to understand that energy, and it was kind of an oscillating, a very powerful energy. And my understanding was like, wow, this is my life energy that I'm actually tapping into here. Right. And so, later, so when I went in the monastery, this energy was coursing through me the entire night. It was like it had gone on steroids. So I think it was some of the monks in that monastery who I got to know very, very well, and actually continued to work with after I left, had a lot of meditative, concentrative energy. And I had actually saw that they would do blessings at people's homes, and they would go to the home, and there'd be, like the Burmese community would invite the monks over, and there would be, they'd place some water there, and the monks would do chanting. And after just a brief period of time, that water is filled with thousands of little bubbles. I've never seen anything like it. And they would focus their energy on this water, right? And so I asked one of the monks who's a friend of mine, I said, how, because I'd been to some of these other house blessings, and I said, I've never seen the water do that. He said, well, some of us who are in our monastery, we have tremendous meditative energy. We're able to actually transform that. Yeah.
That's what I believe. It's hard for me not to talk right now because you're describing your 20s very similar to my 20s. I'm 43, but from 18, I had a shadow person experience that went on about 4 or 5 months, being tortured by this being. I don't want to call it demonic or whatever, but it would take me out of my body and show me things. And I'm really connecting with your book on that, with how Mason sees things he shouldn't know. Right. That's what happened to me. This thing would torture me by showing me things people were doing behind my back, and I would actually confirmed. You're trying to turn everything against me. It was, I don't know. That's all other story to get into. But I seriously, what saved me was, and as I got in my 20s, I got into more spirituality because of surviving this. I felt like God or a force or an ancestor of mine intervened and kicked this being out of my existence. Saved me from it. Got me very spiritual, and I got into Buddhism. My mom got into Buddhism on her own.
Interesting, yeah.
And I've had flashbacks to a past life as a Buddhist monk, a very vivid dream. So I got very interested in Buddhism. Now, I don't call myself a Buddhist, but I have a lot of the practices, and I have I have a Buddhist statue out in my yard, and I have a Buddhist. It's like I respect, just like I read into the Old Testament, New Testament, and
you're kind of like me, Jason. I just I like the Bood part, which means awakening. It's the ism and the the dogmatic parts of any system that can get rigid, but I find that there's a lot of helpful and meaningful work in that tradition.
Well, for me, when you talked about, you're describing the energy you felt.
Yeah.
I had that. I didn't know about chakras or Reiki or energy at the time, just very vaguely knew about it, but didn't understand it. And I thought I had a brain tumor. Because I had so much energy coming in at that time. It was my 20s, I had a lot was changing in my life. I was going to join a Buddhist monastery. I wanted to do what you did. I was seriously looking at a monastery in California.
Yeah.
San Bernardino, I think it was. Yes, I was. I had the website. I was talking to my parents about it, and they were just like, oh my God. My mom is into Buddhism, but she doesn't want me joining a monastery, She wants grandkids for one. Yeah. But then I met my wife, and we've been married, almost 20 years. So I chose a different path, and I'm happy with it. But there's a little what if would have happened if I gone there. You chose to do it, go there, but you did leave. And you went on this other path. Talk a little bit about that. What made you decide? Okay, I've got the teachings. I like this, but I want to do something else. What made you leave the monastery?
Well, I think it kind of catapulted me when I went in the monastery. It kind of advanced. It kind of gave me, kind of filled in a lot of the blanks for me, and I was ripe for the experience. Sometimes you could be in a monastery if you're not ready for it, and you're just, you're going through the motions. But I was very ripe. I was very ready for it, and the teachings really stuck with me. And there was an inner transformation, right? You can learn something, but then there's the experiences. Something shifted in me. There was I came out of that monastery really a different person. I started doing so. I knew I'd be in there for a period of time. Even when I started, I thought, what? I feel like my work is out here in the world. But I wanted to learn what this monk knew. How did he learn that, right, to become that kind of person? And so when I left, I started doing workshops on, spiritual eating. I'd always been a mindless eater, and I went to the monastery. I learned a lot about that.
Mindful eating.
Yeah, about mindful eating. So I started doing these workshops, and the incredible thing is, I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams that going into the monastery would have put my life on a completely different trajectory. So after doing these workshops, people would come up to me afterwards, and they kind of whisper, I have this anorexia problem. I've got this bulimia problem with food, and what do I do? And I didn't know how to work with them in a more, therapeutic, clinical way. So I went back to grad school, and when I did that, I was a little concerned at first, because I could see the healing power of mindfulness, and I was like, I don't know how the field is going to accept this. I mean, I was learning about different kinds of theories around counseling and cognitive behavioral theories and stuff like that. But you know what? It turned out the timing was right, and mindfulness was just coming in with John Kabat-Zinn and all of his work, and so it was very accepted, and there was a lot of research around it at the time. And so I was, kind of pleasantly surprised, because I don't know if I would have gone all the way into the field. And then I ended up working in an eating disorder clinic and a psychiatric clinic, and working with people who had very severe conditions, especially the eating disorder. Gosh, my heart goes out when I think about that clientele and how they were struggling.
Yeah. And so, it's a sad. I've known people with eating disorders. I mean, it's sad to watch somebody go through, struggle with that, and there's a shame they put. They feel like they can't talk about it or tell people, because they feel ashamed of it, and that's not going to help their situation either. And that's what makes having a therapist or seeking help important, and not to be ashamed and feel like you have somewhere to go talk to. Yeah, I feel people need that for paranormal stuff that happens to, and that's why I do a show.
No, we do, and what I found was kind of missing in the mental health field was this understanding of how we need to bring in the whole person, how we need to bring in the spiritual part of our being, right? And it's so critical, but it's just it's very mechanical in some ways. And you give somebody a diagnosis, and I kind of address some of these themes in the book, and so. I've had people come to me, and you give them a diagnosis because insurance companies won't pay until they get one of these codes, right? And,
right. I was trying to understand that in the book. I was like, you're very, very bring you into that kind of world in the story. It's very depressing to learn that so much of that is about just making sure we can code somebody so we can get them the right insurance money.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, unfortunate in one way, but hopefully, what I hope with this book is not only is it's a mystical, it's a spiritual journey, but also that it does take people in the world and gives them a clearer view of how we need to change it and how it could be better. And the psychiatrist, the main character, is struggling with that, of course, right? Because he's very rational, science oriented, and I think we're in the stranglehold of a materialistic view of things in our world nowadays, and we need to broaden that out. We need to find silence. We need to connect with these transcendental realms that are out there, and for everyone. You're talking about how you experienced what I did in my 20s, and I think that a lot of people experience it, but they either are fearful, they push it away, or they don't tell anybody. In fact, I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time, at that age, and he was very helpful to me. But I'm kind of happy that I never told him what I experienced.
Right. I went through that too. My mom found me in a horrible state at one point, and I was 18. And she's like, "I want you to see somebody if you need to." I didn't like when you're being attacked by something supernatural. Who do you tell? They're going to think you're crazy. So I had to sit down with a psychologist or therapist, right? I can't remember. And I tried to talk about things in a way that wouldn't get into what I was really experiencing. And he was nice, and I can't blame him, but I couldn't just open up. I couldn't tell him, literally I'm being attacked by this, 7-8 foot tall shadow being in my room that rips me out my body, takes me on an astral journey, shows me things that are awful, knows everything about me, all my insecurities, tortures me in my dreams, out of my dreams, awake, see him wide awake, it was me and 2 other people experiencing this. This scene tortured us for months. And then I was saved. I feel like by the force, God, whatever. I asked for help. I said, God, help me, and it saved me. And ever since then, whether, I eventually started doing this show is because I feel like there's people that go through these things that are extraordinary. Absolutely. And they have known it. You have your own PTSD. I slept with the lights on for years.
Oh, yeah. It can be very frightening. And, I remember one time I was actually staying at someone's house, and I woke up at night and I felt a psychic attack. I mean, it wasn't what you experienced. I was very sure. This is long after I'd been in the monastery, actually. So I started doing mantras and visualizing the people who I knew had some, pure positive spiritual energy to protect me. Now, I don't know if somebody later said, well, they thought that might have been a burial ground or something that was over. I didn't think that's what it was. I thought there was somebody's unconscious was projecting
biolocation.
On me. Yeah, biolocation, exactly, which is also in Travelers. And
yeah, that's why I love the book. I honestly do, because this is right up my alley of interest. I've always had a fascination of stories of like Stephen King's Dark Tower series, walk-ins or travelers. I've used that in some of my short stories and stories I've tried to write. I refer to them as travelers or walk-ins or interlopers, and that's what I'm not finished with the book, so I don't want to, I'm not going to give you the way.
I won't spoil. I won't give a spoiler.
But Jackie, like this character you have that just the stuff she does in this book and the way she walks in, I've had some weird experiences like that, and I've just written my fiction a lot in those lines of characters like her, these ideas of people that, are they part of, are they step-ins or walk-ins into the reality? Are they angels? What are they? It's just, it really, I know you're trying to like do a lot in this book when it comes to really like showing the world that you lived in with psychology and with your character, what he's dealing with and all that. But I love this aspect to it, and I feel like you're not going to give us any ending to knowing who she is or what it is. But that's fine. That's fine. I love it better left in the imagination. But I what took you out of you've written all these other books. I mean, you have the Mindfulness Toolbox. You have a lot of these books are really highly praised, but now this is your first fiction book. What really took you into the world of wanting to write a fictional story like this?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I believe that the story kind of wrote me. I actually tried to write this as a nonfiction book at first, and to talk about some of the concepts of what does it mean to be a traveler here. But that book did not want to be written. It was so frustrating for me because I've written a lot of nonfiction books, and it was one of the first times that I got completely stymied. And finally, I realized this book wants to tell its story through these characters. Right. And so I don't know. It's almost, I don't know if you feel this when you write, but there's almost a sense of that it's channeling through you.
Yes.
Right.
I need to get back into it. I've lost that channel. My wife is like, when are you ever going to get back into writing? Because that's how she met me. I was always writing. I was writing all the time. Then I had kids and life and don't play music, don't write anymore. I used to, but everything I did when I used to be this creative, It was like a channel. And there would be stuff I'd write that would predict the future, or songs I would write in the lyrics. I go, oh, wow, that really relates to now. And it felt like I always was channeling something.
Yeah. So a lot of it was trying to, for me, was to get out of the thinking discursive mind and to just let the creative source be more free. Now, I know as a writer, you could write yourself into a corner. You have to be.
I've done it. I had done a bunch of dead books on the shelves that I hate that I wrote.
That can happen, but fortunately, I was the characters wrote the story, and I think it was a story that I really wanted to tell that I couldn't tell in a nonfiction way, to really have people experience and connect with those characters and connect with the mystery. And I hope that it sounds like that's coming through to you. I'm really grateful that is. But I think we need to we need to find the mystery in our lives. We need to get out of the grip, the stranglehold of that materialistic, reductionistic view where consciousness, believe me, it's shocking to me when I think, I read a lot about the brain. I was involved in teaching, interpersonal neurobiology at Portland State. But when I hear these neurologists talk about, we don't have free will. It
drives me nuts.
We don't have consciousness. It's just a byproduct of
we're just
of
robots.
Brain activity. We're robots, and it just is shocking to me that intelligent people would fall to that line of thinking. But again, that's that materialistic viewpoint of reductionism, and it's doing a disservice to us as for our growth, our evolution as living beings. And I don't know, it's a mystery, where did we come from, but where are we going? But while we're here, we have this incredible gift and this ability to communicate, this ability to have these transcendental experiences and to see how things are all connected. In the book, I call it the quantum collective. And it's the idea that time and space are really all encoded in one another, and we can tap into that. It's so interesting because I've talked with people who are specialists in grief, and grief is kind of a theme. The psychiatrist has lost his daughter. It's a very agonizing loss for him, and I always say, if you're in a human body and you have a human mind, then you're going to experience loss. You're going to experience grief. You're going to experience, aging. We can't avoid that. But how we interpret it and how we connect with those lost loved ones is, for a lot of people, they still feel their presence here, and they still feel they can connect with them in some ways. And I feel that too. I feel that there are ways even to connect to your earlier self that may have been struggling. I will still send messages to the younger me.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that probably the older me, the future me, is sending helpful messages to me now. And so that's something we can actually do. There's nothing stopping us from trying to connect with our younger selves and send positive messages, try to alleviate that pain. Maybe there was a time in your life when you suddenly, something changed for you. You did a new, you broke that addiction, or why did I decide to go into that monastery? Right. Maybe there was some future part of me or some other energies.
I believe that totally. I believe in that totally. I've ever since I was a little kid, I'd have dreams of the future. Like I'd see things that would happen. Sometimes it'd be something mundane and stupid. Sometimes it'd be something important. It actually saved somebody from killing themselves at one point when I was in 6th grade. I've had some really crazy experiences, and I've always been fascinated with time and these experiences. And, I've never believed in predestination. I've had mediums on here, a couple that believe that everything's predestined. If I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I'm like, okay. I don't, because I've had it proved to me with these experiences, because I had one where I dreamt basically that my friend had tried to set me up with this girl. She called me and was like, come hang out with us. And in the dream, I did. I went and hang out with them, and then got real big trouble with my girlfriend, my future wife. And she broke up with me. It was horrible. Was stupid. A week or two later, after that dream, I get a phone call from that girl. Never met her before, but I knew right away. I was like, put my friend on. I'm like, she's like, what? I'm like, he put you up to this call, didn't he? She goes, well, yeah. I said, put them on. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, man, you should just come hang out. I'm like, he didn't like my wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I changed it. Like, if I had gone out, it would have been in big trouble, And I've had other things like that I feel like I've changed. So I don't think anything's predestination, but is that my future self showing me it? I'm a big Stephen King. I've mentioned before, I'm a big Stephen King fan. There was always hints of that in The Shining with, if you remember, little Danny Torrance. It'd be like, he got the Tony inside of his mouth, like in the movie, but whatever. But it would always seem like it was his future self, and they kind of alluded that in the series that Stephen King directed, that it was his future self kind of communicating to his child self, what's going to happen. And a time is an illusion, and who's to say we don't influence our past selves, or maybe in different timelines? I don't know, but I there's something there.
Yeah, it's something that we need to connect with, and I think what's happened is we get so busy and our minds are going so quickly nowadays, and our attention is going outward that sometimes it's harder to connect with that energy or that force that is that we're connected with on all these different levels. And so that's why I'm always talking about how we need to get more present. So I think mindfulness actually is a great way to tap into that source or that force.
I love that you can keep saying force, because that's what I tell people. Like I put on the census my religion is Jediism, because I really don't have a religion. But I relate as a little kid growing up in the '80s and to Star Wars. To me, people come, I'd have like the Christians try to bring me there was this faith community thing that would come out to outreach thing, whatever. They try to get the kids come, like, we'll give you food and treats, come listen about Jesus Christ. And I was like, yeah, I'm not into that. I got Yoda, man. For me, I grew up with my mom. It was just me and my mom until I was 10. And my stepdad, is my dad, really. He's very scientific, but he's the one who introduced me to books like Illusions by Richard Bach. He's not an atheist per se. He's got an open mind, but he's not a religious at all. My mom got into Buddhism. I grew up in an open household to believe what I want, And for me, the closest thing that related to me is the idea of a force, a will, or that moves life, and hopefully, and call it love or compassion or the ways you tap into it. I feel the most closest to it. When I had my experience of being saved by that shadow person, I felt a presence that was just full of immense love and compassion. It didn't matter at that moment anything I ever did in my past. All was forgiven. Beautiful. Nothing matters. No judgment on anyone. That you have this feeling that this thing is here to. I have your back always. I'm always there with you. That was an instantaneous knowing and feeling at that moment.
Yeah. I really believe that love is an energy that is I think the universe, when it came into being with love somehow. And, it's interesting, that monk I told you about, he told me his private practice, the practice that he did the most, that he loved teaching, was a loving kindness practice. I think that's how he developed that sense of a sense of calmness he had, but that sense of openness and compassion for others.
But you could feel it coming from him.
I could feel it.
I've met a monk like that.
Yeah. There had been an interesting study that was done where they had people in a room, and these people were put in this room, just told to just sit there, right? And they were hooked up to different. I think they were hooked up to some brainwave equipment.
Oh, I think.
And then there were people in another room, and they said, "We want you to send." They said, "These people in this next room, they need your love, they need your kindness," and so they had this second group of people sending love and energy to this group that was in the room, and it showed up on their brainwaves. They started to have different brainwaves, and then when they told the people in the second room, they said, "Okay, stop that now. Stop sending that." The brainwaves reverted back to the normal method. So actually, that transmission, you really do feel it.
I've felt it myself, and and I felt it from other people. I've actually felt I've felt it from some people within the Christian faith.
Sure,
I'm saying some people, they have, for them, Jesus Christ, and having that faith in God and Christ has opened them up to a level of compassion for others you can feel coming off them. It's authentic. I believe you can feel this from many other people in different religions. It's opening themselves up to being humble, I think, realizing that you're part of something much bigger.
Yeah, I
that we
think
all are.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think humility is something we don't often hear talk about. We don't hear it being talked about, but to have that sense of humility about yourself, it reduces the ego.
Yeah.
When I would have people when I run a lot of workshops. You mentioned that, and what I would have them do is I'd have a lot of them do mindful walking, and I would teach them just to take this step, take this next step, and they were noticing, being very intentional about it, though, not just mindlessly moving about, but taking a step with my right foot, taking a step with my left foot, noticing their surroundings. And it was like they were flowing. It was beautiful. I would sometimes just stand back and watch them. It was kind of like they were dancing, moving in this beautiful way. But it was also as if the ego had shrunk. There was a sense of humility. They were no longer walking quickly, with ambition and the drive. And I got to get this done. I got to get that done. Right. A lot of us drive that way. And that's something I have to continually remind myself to, okay, I'll get there. It's all right. I can have patience for myself and others. And so, it's a reminder. We keep reminding ourselves. Actually, if you go back to the early meaning of the word mindfulness, which is sati, it's a Sanskrit word, Jason, and it means, the original meaning of it meant self-recollection and self-remembrance. So it's kind of bringing back the fragmented parts of ourselves, finding our wholeness again. And I think that's so important if we could, just slow down a little bit in our lives.
I think it would help a lot of people if they did. I mean, I think so many people do so much stuff unconsciously, cruelly to each other now. We're in the day of the keyboard warriors.
I've never heard it mentioned like that before.
Well, it's easy to type something and let it go into the universe.
Yeah.
And we're all judgment of everyone else. Everybody's outraged about everything. It's so tiring now. It's so tiring.
The infinite library of the universe is in your own mind. That's a quote that's in Travelers. And Vivekananda was a Hindu sage back in the 19th century. He brought a lot of the Eastern ideas to the West originally. And that is an interesting thing. How do we tap that infinite library of the universe? And, and when we do that, we're less trying to, wave the flag of the ego. Hey, look at me. Or, this is my idea. And we learn how to listen, right? When you see that all this is out there, and it's out there not when you're attached to the ego, but when you let go of the ego, is when I think we can start to tap that infinite library. And it's very powerful. I think a lot of people have the experience, but again, I think many of them are afraid or push it away or see it as bad in some way.
I have to ask you this because you mentioned past lives. Because there's parts of us that we have to connect with that I remember my 20s where the part of that transition was getting disconnected from my friends who had like a picture of who I was, and I would fulfill that part, and I realized I'm not that person they picture me as.
Yeah.
And broke away from that. But one of the things that happened in my 20s too that really made me realize what my ego was is I had two very vivid dreams of past lives. The first one I was a little African-American girl slave who was beaten to death by her white slave master and father. It was very vivid. I felt every blow of the broomstick he used to beat me to death with, and I woke up from that dream crying. Wow. That was a shocker. I knew when I woke up that was something because I was that little girl. Even though I'm me, Jason Bland, whoever I was, and that little girl, I was a little girl.
Right.
I'm not going to be afraid to admit it. Back then I didn't want to tell anybody about it. Like, oh yeah, I was a little girl in the past life. I don't care now. I was that person. And then I had one where I was a Buddhist monk who I don't know exactly where. I feel like it was probably in Vietnam or somewhere along that lines where I betrayed my temple and my master basically by turning them into these soldiers. And they raided the temple and shot and killed me. I woke up right when I was getting shot in the chest and jumped up out of bed. But I was that person. I knew the story of that life. you know what, my friend, I remember my Christian friend always saying, "Oh, I don't believe in past lives. How can you be you without your memories?" I go, if I knocked you over the head and you had amnesia and you didn't know who you were and you woke up and like, who am I? You know, are you now a new soul? You know, you're still you.
Right,
You just
right.
lost your access to your memories. It's no different with past lives. I've had a guest on, Chris Lee, who does past life therapy, where people have ailments, and he's done this with me with my neck issues and that, and I have really bad problems in my hands from a psoriatic arthritis. To a past life where I was a person, being a woman in this past life too, who was jailed in like the 16th century for being a witch, and my hands were crushed, and I ended up doing myself in by my neck, you know, basically strangling myself. And he does these things with people and makes them, he says, by them going and seeing through this regression their past life, it will relieve certain ailments now that are within the body energy field that are still there from that past life. By seeing it and understanding it, releases that energy. You getting into Buddhism, and it has its aspects in about past lives and that. What is your experience personally with past lives, and how you think it might be, affecting us now in our life, in our everyday life?
Well, actually, I think of it. Oh, excuse me. I have a little water here. I think of it on a couple different levels. One is the experience of past lives. And as I was telling you, I've had some very vivid experiences that seem different from a dream state. I mean, actually see it happening. Sometimes where I'm in, it's like first person and I'm experiencing it.
Yeah, where then it's outside of it.
And sometimes I've been outside of it watching it. At one time I was in military uniform. It wasn't American military, but it must have been during maybe the First World War or some kind of thing. And there were explosions behind me and I was running, filled with fear. I've had another one where I was in this very beautiful place with these giant temples, and everybody had on these luminescent robes. And I was speaking to somebody in a different language. I could speak that language. Right. This experience.
That's what it was like in my dream too, with the Buddhist monk. I wasn't speaking English.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I knew it.
So somehow we are able to tap in and carry some of those impressions. Think about it. Everything we do has an impression. If you walk on the sand, you're at the beach and look back and you see all the impressions of your footprints, right? Well, I think every life we have, every experience we have, even every thought, and that's why we need to be conscious of what our actions are, what we're doing, right? And how we step through our day, because we're leaving impressions, and those impressions can follow us, I think. So so there's that level of it. The other level is actually our epigenome, and it's been shown. So you have the genes, which are kind of like the computer, right? And then you have something called the epigenome, and epi means above the gene, and that's kind of like the software that tells the computer, when to turn on, when to turn off, and how the genes will express. And it's been shown that the epigenome, which are kind of like our habits and the things we connect with, that can turn genes on or off, that's hereditary. So what your grandparents ate, your great-grandparents ate, could have affect your genetics today. So I think we all carry our ancestors with us, and I think it's important to just think about whether it's in terms of near-death experiences, which there have been so many of those that people have had, and even they've shown there have been people who, when they're young children, say, "Hey, I grew up in this other village, and I know these people." I mean, that's been well documented. But also, we carry the genetics of our ancestors with us. So I think we need to bring a great deal of compassion. I mean, who hasn't suffered? You talked about how you suffered in these other lifetimes. I saw suffering in my previous lifetimes in these experiences. So here we are today, and we can look back and we can say, "Wow, look at all the suffering in our human community. Can't we change that now? Don't we deserve to make it a little better for the next generation?" Right? So I think it can be a teacher, and I think it serves an important purpose for us to connect with those experiences.
For me, both those really vivid experiences, and even the regression I have with Chris Lee, just made me realize about myself is that I make this persona of me, Jason Bland. Talk myself in third person even feels weird, but it is just a persona. There's something else to the core that was in that little girl, that was in that Buddhist monk. There's something beyond those layers of this personality or this face. It made me look deeper at that, and also made me look at why I am wired the way I am wired. Ever since I was a little kid, I don't trust government, authority, religion. And with the Buddhist monk experience, that definitely explains it. And then in that dream, I felt like I knew afterwards that the father that beat me to death was my biological father in this life, who wanted nothing to do with me. And I always wonder if there's a connection, like layers of guilt there, and some people don't understand why some people disassociate from other people because there's a past you don't understand, neither party. I believe there's so many connections from past lives that affect us now with the people around us that we don't understand why we have these interactions with certain people. It don't make sense sometimes because it's just past we don't understand, but our subconsciouses do.
Yeah, imagine if you were to think to yourself that everybody around you has been connected to you, even as a family member at some point. So at some point, you've been somebody's parent or you've been their child, and how differently you would want to, act toward them, knowing that. And we have a chance in this lifetime to kind of, burn off that negative energy if it's been following us around, and change some of those patterns that we have. And when you change that energy pattern, you're actually, I think, changing, what's going to happen in the future for yourself. You're improving your life situation, I think.
Yeah. I think, too, it really opened me up to the idea that, there's, for when you get to compassion, that we've all possibly been the bad guy in the story, and the good guy, and the victim, and the victimizer.
Yeah.
But that's all forgiven because that are all experiences and learning experiences.
It's a hard lesson, isn't it? To learn how to forgive and to have compassion, because the brain is, we're in a modern world in a lot of ways with technology, but we still have this ancient brain that has this thing called the amygdala. It's a part of the brain that it triggers the fight or flight response and says, it's very primitive, right? And so
it got us through surviving and being here where we are now. But yes,
absolutely. And what we have to do is use these other, more evolved parts of our brain, the prefrontal cortex. Actually, I call it the mindfulness module, the part of the brain that has awareness of what we're doing. It has kind of this self-knowing awareness. It connects us with others. It has.
If it's damaged, you can see it with people that are super psychotic or serial killers. That part of their brain is very different than ours. There's got to be something important going on there.
Yeah, we've seen that people with brain injuries. That's how we kind of learned what certain abilities or cognitive strengths are missing when you have a damage to a certain part of the brain. But I see the brain kind of as a receiver. Right. Consciousness is coming in, we're receiving it, and
that there's a higher self. Like this brain can't take in the compassionate part of the higher self because it's damaged, but there is the higher self.
Yeah, I could see how that could be. I mean, I think we're still have a lot of blunt instruments when it comes to psychology. Psychology thinks of it as self as a science, but really the word psych in psychology means soul. So what we want to do is try to really, learn more about the soul. And psychology's kind of what they call a soft science. It keeps changing. But the people in the field would like to say, "Oh, this is definitely the way it is." Well,
we're not far off from when they were doing lobotomies. It's not that long ago.
The guy who developed the lobotomy, he won the Nobel Prize for that. hard to believe, isn't it?
Right? That's what I'm saying. We're not. That's why I mean, like, trust the science. Well, science, science can change.
Well, science science can only understand what it shines its light on. So it doesn't understand a lot of these ideas that we're talking about here today, but which people really experience. So there's a disconnect with science. I read an interesting book that I liked called The Science Delusion by Rupert Sheldrake, and he's a biologist, and he talks about some pretty interesting ideas and how a lot of our biology is like habit can change biology. So a lot of different kinds of ideas, but scientists just don't want to look at a lot of those constructs.
What the conscious is probably the scariest thing to them. Because it's one of the most unexplained phenomenon that we are, and you can't, just open it up and observe it,
Well, and what's so interesting, I mean, all the experiments that we've created to look at consciousness or look at anything are created by mind. They're created by consciousness. Yeah.
They can look at brain waves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Created by that. And they're observed and interpreted by the consciousness. Right. So consciousness is so subjective. And now I do have some things where there's kind of a Vulcan mind meld that takes place in travelers. And I know a Tibetan monk who experienced that, where his teacher actually put his forehead on his head, and he saw consciousness, saw reality through the mind of his.
So I totally believe that. I think science has proved that in some ways. I've always been interested in that. I'm a big Star Trek fan, by the way. Besides Star Wars, Star Trek, love you, Spock. Because I mean, they've done experiments where people are in a room together, talking to each other, having a conversation, and monitoring their brain, and they actually sync up.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Your heart rate will sync up too. If you're in a relationship with someone like you, and you mentioned your wife, but you and your wife probably are very much in sync. Your breathing, your heart rate, and probably your electromagnetic waves in the brain.
Oh yeah. Well, we used to do games together when we were dating. That's why I was like, I knew the first date I was going to marry her.
Yeah.
Because she's into this stuff. We used to do like mind reading games, and man, we would get pretty dang connected, like to be able to like I'll picture a symbol, she'd read it, or vice versa. Or I picture an image, like just a simple black and white line image or something she could pick up on, and she'd try to draw it, and like, that's it. And I'd show her mine, like
that's cool.
We because you get in a sync with somebody. And we do it constantly, each other, like, you just read my thoughts. I'm like, we do it all the time.
Yeah, I remember there was a lady that I had worked with many years ago. I just got out of college, and she just read my thoughts a couple times where I hadn't opened my mouth, and it was something that I thought that was way out of left field. She never could have guessed what I was going to say.
I've done it to people I work with. These aren't, girlfriends, boyfriends, it's just people, I work with, but you work with them every day and you start to sync up. And I've said things like, I was just going to say that, like I've done that, or they've done it to me, like you get on a wavelength with people. And these are little things I don't think society notices because we are so tuned into the materialistic world. We don't notice these subtleties to life and interaction.
And they can actually have a survival reason that we're able to do that. I was once in Los Angeles and I visited somebody at one of the airport hotels. I was walking back to my car. It was dark, and all of a sudden this thought came into my head, and I thought, "Whoa, what if somebody just decided to attack me right now, like at knife point? What would I do?" It was just like I thought, I'm just having a thought, right?
Right.
And I'm looking around, and I saw a car at the end of the block. I said, "Well, what if they were in that car and they drove up here and decided to, rob me?" All of a sudden, the lights on that car turned on, and it drove up, and it exactly happened as I had seen it in my mind's eye. Now it's interesting too. This guy, I could feel his fear. He confronted me, had this huge butcher knife. Give me your money. And I heard this voice. Now I don't. It's kind of interesting. Where did this come from? I didn't know what to do. I was actually experiencing that fight or flight, and I hear this guy with this huge knife, and I heard a voice that said, "Throw the wallet." It's like I threw the wallet in one direction and ran in the other back to my car. But what was that voice? I've often asked myself that question.
I've been there.
And then it was interesting because I went to report it, and I lost my wallet, and the officer said, "Gosh," he said, "you're one of the first persons I've seen. You're not really angry at that person for doing that to you." And I said, "Well, I felt his fear. I mean,
his desperation too.
His
probably.
desperation, yeah." And I said, I really felt for him for what he had to go through to do that. Well, then a few months later, maybe 6 months later, but I had taken to heart what had happened and how I'd picked up on what was going to happen. I was again at the airport. This time I had parked my car in the long-term lot, and I'd come back from a trip, and I was going to take I was on the shuttle, and this guy got on the bus, and he looked at me. It was just a brief, minute glance, and he walked to the back of the bus. But I was stuck with this strong feeling he's going to try to rob me. And I was like, given what happened before,
you listen.
This was like, did you learn the lesson?
Yeah.
Right. So while we're driving to the parking lot, I thought, well, I'm not going to go back to my car, because if he's going to get off with me, and he probably has a gun or whatever. I just had a feeling of violence.
Right.
So I thought, you know what? I'm going to get off at the first stop. There's a kiosk there, and I'll walk, and I can just keep walking past the kiosk and get to my car. But if he's behind me, I'll go into the kiosk, and there were usually some people in there. So I got off the bus, and I'm walking, I'm ready to go past the kiosk. I look back, he's right behind me. Mm-hmm. I turned into the kiosk, and he just turned away. He left.
Oh, yeah. That is survival instinct. We got to go to commercial break. More to cover with our guest, Donald Altman. We're going to be talking about his book, The Travelers. I am truly enjoying this book. We won't have spoilers because I waited to finish it until after this interview tonight. So our guest, Donald Altman, after this commercial break, and we will open up the phone lines if you want to call in and join this conversation or have questions for our guest tonight. But we will be right back.
Into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday at the live stream with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42. Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID OOJBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is author Donald Altman. He is the author of Travelers and also 20 other books. So Travelers is his first fictional book. I've been reading this book, totally loving it. You guys definitely should check out this book. You can definitely get it on, I believe it, well, I forgot to ask if he has a release date. We'll get that from him. But I got a copy of it. I've been reading it. I'm totally enjoying it. It's right up my alley of fiction that I enjoy to read in fiction. And I think you guys would too. We're talking a lot of different things here. What's going on in society, mindfulness, biolocation, paranormal phenomenon, and compassion. You know, this world could be so much better if we could all just show a little bit more compassion towards each other, or try to bring more compassion into our lives. To me, it would change the world if we all just did just a little bit more compassion for others. Try to walk in somebody else's shoes. I teach this to my kids all the time, is when somebody is being bad to you at school or another kid is, you don't know what they go home to. You don't know what their life they're living or what their parents are telling them or teaching them or what their life they have to go home to. Maybe they don't even have a bed to sleep in. You never know what somebody else is going through. It's one thing I try to teach my kids is compassion. I think it's one of the most important things I can teach them. And I think this world needs a lot more of it. A lot more of it. All right, guys, phone lines are open. Call on the show, join this conversation, ask questions of our guest, Donald Altman tonight. We got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get right back into it. Thank you for staying with me tonight, Donald. It's like I said, it's an honor to have you on the show. I am truly enjoying the book Travelers. Highly recommend it. Is it released now? Or
Yeah,
I don't know. Sometimes I get early copies.
Yeah, it came out last week, so it's exciting.
Last week. Oh, all right, awesome. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. It's up my alley of fiction. When I was in my 20s, I wrote some fiction I had shared with some friends online, and it was very similar in the idea of people, what I said, walk-ins and travelers. And I remember one friend gave my short story to a friend that was in prison.
Oh,
and she wrote to me, and she's like, I want to pass this on. He read your story, and she kicked me today because I never did publish it. He said, thank you for your story, because it was about people who could literally find doorways to other parallel universes.
Oh, really?
Special people. And he's like, you gave me a way for my imagination to give me hope that maybe there's a doorway I could get out of this jail. But, that's the kind of stuff I enjoy in stories, is this kind of idea of that reality is not whatever the materialistic world tells it is. I realized that at a very young age when me and my cousin, we were 5 years old, saw a green floating head fly through our room. In the middle of the night. And he saw it, I saw it at a witness. I'm saying? I've known since I was a little kid that reality is not what the materialistic world is constantly telling me it is, that there's something way more to it. We do have a phone call if you're ready to take calls.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think we got Zach on the line. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. How about yourself?
Doing great. We got a show going without internet glitches, knock on wood.
Yeah. Hi, Zach.
No glitches. That's a great thing. So I have two questions tonight. I'll keep them as short as possible. Hey, Donald. Very nice to meet you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
My first question goes back to something that you mentioned earlier called mind eating. I've never heard that phrase.
Mindful eating.
Mindful eating. Thank you. Mindful eating. Can you elaborate a little bit about what that is? And in your opinion, what would be like I'm paraphrasing this, a healthy diet when utilizing this practice?
Yeah, it's a good question, Zach. So mindful eating is really being aware of, first of all, your hunger level, right? So a lot of people wait until they're like super hungry and then they eat the first thing they see or go through the drive-through and order something that they wouldn't eat normally or order more food than they wouldn't eat. So it's about being aware of your hunger level. You can think of your hunger on a 1 to 10 scale, and 10 the most, I got to eat right now, or whatever it feels like in the body, or 1, not hungry at all. And if you can eat in the 4, 5, 6 range, and you're in that more moderate range, you're going to make better choices. So as far as you mentioned the diet, it's like the other part of it is like thinking about, what is this hunger? What am I hungry for? And so it's kind of tapping into your intuition. Looking at what's available. Protein is important to have throughout the day, and protein actually helps our executive center of the brain work, right? So, but it's also tapping into that, and also noticing, it's not just what you're eating, but it's like kind of like it's what's eating me, right? And so when we're mindless eaters, sometimes we eat emotionally to make an uncomfortable feeling go away. So I worked with a lady who would binge eat, and she would go up to a drive-through and she would, she had an uncomfortable feeling. Yeah. And so she would order, like 2,000-3,000 calories of food, and it would make that feeling go away. But so what I had her do, I said, I want you to go up in the parking lot, and before you go through the drive-through, I want you to give a name to that feeling. And she came back and she said she waited for 40 minutes in that parking lot, and the name she gave it was loneliness, and she had never known that before. And she said, "Wow, not a physical hunger. I don't need to go through the drive-through now. She went home. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So it's also tasting.
Okay.
It's also tasting each morsel, being aware of the, appreciating all the effort that goes into all the different food that's there. So it changes your whole perspective on food and how intimate it was. Man, you're taking something, you put it in your mouth, and you're absorbing its essence.
You are what you eat.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's definitely something that I have to keep in mind. I just started getting back on the keto diet again, so
okay.
Keep my back.
Great.
And my second question, when you were studying to be a monk, were you studying with a monastery that adhered to Theravada Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism?
They were Theravada Buddhism, so it's the old school. It's practiced in Sri Lanka, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma. It's still practiced in those 5 countries, but yeah, it was a Theravada monastery.
All right, cool. Well, those were all the questions that I had. Thank you so much, Donald, for answering them. I really appreciate it, and I love hearing everything that you're saying.
Thanks, Zach. Be well.
Thank you for calling in, Zach.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
You too. Yeah, I had a bad period of time there for a long time. I worked retail and get my hour breaks, and I get an hour break. Where would I go? I might as well have been Ronald frickin' McDonald for how much stupid McDonald's I ate. I don't eat it anymore.
We've all been there. Yeah.
And I bring a veggie chicken sandwich to work. I sit down, I take my time to eat it, and then I go out to my car after I eat, and I just close my eyes, turn off all sensory sound in my quiet car out in the parking lot. Hopefully it's quiet, and just relax and let go. Because I was finding I would stress eat from work.
Yeah.
And get just a bunch of crap from McDonald's and stuff it down, then be weighted down the rest of the day. Now I eat very lightly. Like I said, I have a vegetarian kind of lunch. Not that I'm vegetarian, but I try to cut back on the meats I'm eating and not eat the crap like that. Now I can't. It's like 3 days later after I had to have McDonald's because my kid had karate, and we were like, okay, I guess we're going. He was like, McDonald's chicken nuggets.
Well, it's so convenient, and they're everywhere. I think
3 days later, I'm still suffering from eating it.
Yeah. McDonald's has, I think their goal was to be, I forgot what it was, 5 miles from every household in America.
Yep. They're literally right down the block from me.
Yeah. So it takes some willpower to start getting the habit. So, you've changed your habits over time, right? With food.
Yeah. Yeah. I stopped doing it. And now my system can't take it. If I eat it, I feel sick. I've been literally 3 days now. My stomach's been just upturned from eating that McDonald's. And I used to eat it every day. I'm ashamed. I was stupid to eat it like that. But it was like your friend, like your client. It's like stress eating. And that's what I always loved about Buddhism and mindfulness is trying to get you to realize what your actions are. We are doing so many things now. I feel like in society, people in the cultural discussion that are just not mindful. That people are just reacting to things and just letting their emotions flow with it, and just everybody can speak their mind now. I get it, and it's great that we have this technology that me and you can have this discussion. We got these great people in the chat room. The technology is great. A hammer's technology. It can be used to build a house. It can be used to beat somebody over the head. It can be good or bad. And there's a lot of bad, I feel like, that's come with the social media platforms and with people. Psychologically, I feel like we've damaged ourselves.
There's some amazing research about what happens with, if you overuse media, and with kids, that they stop being able to recognize emotions and facial expressions, So they actually took some kids away to an outdoor camp, and they took their phones away, and in about a week, they tested them again and found they had regained the ability to notice facial expressions and emotions with their peers. And so, the good news is it's wired in, we can recover it, but it seems like too much of that activity, especially in young people, tends to mute our ability to notice those kinds of things, which are so critical, right? I mean, so, if we could
in your book, I love how your character, is always looking at everybody's body language and facial expressions and announcing it's something I do. This is something I read into people's body language and what they do. While I notice the younger generation, I'm making obvious body language that I'm frustrated with them, and they don't even get it. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't even recognize it.
Well, I wanted to take people into the world of what is it like actually to be a therapist, and how does a therapist think, right? And
Right.
so it's a different way of connecting. You feel close to the people. I always felt very close to the people I was working with, but it wasn't like a typical friendship. It's I'm there to try to help them. It's not about me. And so, but I would notice, you could learn a lot by observing and feeling and sensing, attuning to another person. And so I think a lot of the healing can happen at another level, at almost maybe an energetic level. If you are steeped in compassion yourself, I think your client will experience that. And sometimes that's important for someone to feel that there's a sense of care and a sense of rapport with them. And
no judgment.
Yeah, and no
I think that's what people need.
That's really important. And I think that's more important than the modality. I mean, there's all the different modalities you can use, and I have several of them in the book that the psychiatrist uses with the family, with this young boy Mason. But he even tries to use them on himself when he thinks he's losing his own mind.
Right.
Right, but it doesn't work. But you have to have the rapport, and that he has a moment in the book where he and Mason really connect, and there's some laughter, and that's really drawn from my own experience. I had a young man I was working with, and we had a moment of genuine laughter, and I think that was one of the most connecting and therapeutic things we could have done.
Because that's what people need is connection with others.
Oh, gosh.
If you look at the worst things that are in society now that we deal with, is probably school shootings. It's the most horrible act somebody could commit. Any kind of shooting, just school, anywhere. But when you see these people afterwards that have committed these things, there's a lot of deep problems going on with these people, obviously. But it seems that's the problem, is all of them seem to be all disconnected from everyone.
I think they must feel shunned, must feel they're not heard, not seen in some way. And I'm not trying to make them. I'm not trying to say what they do.
It's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. It's a reality.
I think it's driving that they are disconnected, and so
but that's my fear of the future too. Is that we're breeding. I hate to say it this way, but we are breeding monsters. We're creating more and more disconnect. We're doing it in we're not having civil discourse right now within society. We're separating ourselves. I laughed recently at everybody about the Grammys. I don't know if you saw all that, but you have one side. I look at things from I'm an alien. I've always felt I'm an alien. Not that I'm better than anybody. I am not better than anybody. I'm just as much human as anybody else, and I have just as the same flaws as every other human out there. But when it comes as a whole, as a consciousness, as society, I can see how we're always pitted against each other. And I thought this Grammys thing was really a good example. I see people posting about the Grammys oh my God, look at the satanic show. They do this whole theme. With I'm well, I've seen Marilyn Manson do a lot worse than that on stage, buddy. I'm saying, I'm this is nothing new. What are we all upset about? Oh, it's because it was the Grammy sponsored by Pfizer. I really think there's people that sat at the board of the Grammys we went from 32 million viewers to only 8 million. They know there's a whole side of society, conservative, Christian, they're never going to watch the Grammys. They can't stand Hollywood. We got this cultural war. Why don't we just go full on the other way? Let's just do a whole presentation to Satan. Because what that'll do, that'll get that side over there to start screaming and moaning about it. And then this side's going to go, oh, I love the Grammys because they hate it.
Well,
and then these two sides are bickering with each other, and they don't realize how they are being played.
Being manipulated, yeah. Mm-hmm. You ever turn on a news show? Do you think they're ever going to lead with a happy,
never
some kind of story? Never.
Not right, anymore.
They want to grab the amygdala, which I mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
And your amygdala will just react and respond and take you to that more primitive place, of fight and flight. And so you're going to engage at that level, and you're not going to listen. You're not going to be able to understand or try to see the other person's point of view when you're in the, it's kind of you're hijacked by the amygdala.
And that's what I see happening. I mean, news media and all that 30 years ago was totally different. They were the source for everybody. Now you have the internet, social media, and open discourse online that they can't compete. Like a news headline comes out, I just get it right away on my phone. What are you telling me on the news that I didn't already see on my phone? So they got to go with something better and bigger, and to get you pissed off. You know, they got to get your attention. And now we're in this horrible cycle now, I feel like, in society of constant just trying to get your click on their article or get you to watch their video, and then we got to give you the most outrageous outline that's going to just outrage you, and you're going to be clicking on that. You know, and it's constant. It's tiring.
You're really talking about attention and how we're using our attention.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I think is really critical for everybody, is to kind of be the master of your attention, and not to have your thoughts, pull you in one direction or another, not to have somebody else say, get you aroused and again, make you reactive, but to find this place of kind of equanimity. You can just watch and observe. I mean, I loved what you said about how you kind of took this almost alien or, perspective, like you've never seen this, and just observed. That's a kind of, neutral witnessing kind of, that's a very mindful place, actually, I want to tell you, that you got to. If you're able to just observe that, and, I don't have a dog in the fight, right? I'm just curious, and taking that curious perspective about things. I mean, I think that would go a long way toward healing. We just got more curious, right? So you don't agree with somebody. So why do you feel that way? What is it that really, ask some questions, get curious about that person. Now you're not resisting, you're not fighting them.
What people do now is they insult each other.
Right. And
I've been guilty of. I'm not innocent. I've been caught up in this, and I've been guilty of doing it. I've backed away, and I don't anymore. I realize it's serves no purpose.
How is it making you feel?
Right, awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've never been one, like, I remember being a kid in school and there'd be a fight that would break out, and everybody in the lunchroom would stand up and go, ooh, ah, and I'd be the only one sitting down. I'm like, Jesus. Because I don't care. I don't like it. I feel people's vibes. I always have. I feel people's energy. When you talk about that, God honest knows truth. I've been in fights, and it's hard for me to fight somebody because I can feel their emotions attack me. I'm very empathetic. And I can feel energy coming off of people. I had the store manager. I loved her to death. But she gave there was definitely, like, I didn't have to be psychic to know if she was upset, because there was a certain body language she would give to let me know she's upset. But I could feel it, too. I would, like, walk in the door before I would see her, and I'd feel it. I'm like, what's wrong? What did I do? What made you angry? Because if it's directed at me, I would feel it as soon as I walked through the door before I even see her. There's certain people energy I can feel. It's not like I'm reading their mind. I just the feeling of their emotion I get, and it can make me sick.
Yeah, it's kind of cool because we get feedback from our skin that lets us know, oh, this is where I end and someone else starts, is beyond me. But if you didn't have that skin sending messages back to your brain, you would not know where you began and the other person began or ended, right? You'd be connected. And I think you're able to, with that empathic ability, able to sense those kinds of things. I think we have the ability, and we can cultivate that, actually. But, you need to tune into the body. We get caught up. We're a mental culture, right? And we're all caught up in the head, ideas spinning. Oh, the average person, I'll ask your audience, how many thoughts have you counted that you had today? And I don't think anybody would even try to do that, because the average person has about 20,000 thoughts a day, minimum. So, and how many of those thoughts tell you something really profound about who you are, or how many of those thoughts are really helpful to you, right? But that's what the mind does, is spinning all of these ideas.
The monkey mind.
Yeah, it's the monkey mind. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and we grab onto those thoughts, or we identify with those thoughts. Oh, that's who I am. And that's where we get into trouble. Yeah.
Oh, right there. Remember I said when I was in my 20s, I did things that now I totally regret, but it took me a while to realize that I was being shaped by those around me, making a false character of me. And I was to fulfill their expectations.
Yeah.
It took me a real awakening to break from that. Like, I'm not this person you think I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be. You know, and it's like people like to put people in boxes and characters.
Sometimes it happens in a family, or it happens in an institution, or it happens in a religion. I mean, it happens in a lot of different ways. Where there's a demand that you be a certain way, and you have a loyalty or an allegiance to that. It's hard to break out. You have to have strength, and you need support too.
And again, mindfulness. It's coming back to paying attention, and that's what I think that what worries me about the world is because we are become so materialistic. I think there is an awakening too. It's a weird thing because we have a spiritual awakening. We have shows like mine, you know, shows before like Art Bell that went on for 30 years. Lots of 60 million listeners, people that are opening their minds to new concepts and ideas in the Western world. That's great. It's great. But at the same time, we have this whole materialistic society on there, and I'm guilty too. I have a phone. I'm on it too much. I've been trying to make myself put it away at times. Like, don't be on your phone. But we're getting sucked into this other world, this virtual world.
Yeah.
We can be totally different. Other people there. We can speak our minds totally, be a part of the conversation. But the problem is without the personal consequences. Like, would you say that to the person you work with every day, or your family member? Would you say that to somebody you had physically standing in front of you? No, you wouldn't. But like I said, the keyboard warrior in people comes out, and they feel free to express themselves. And I feel like, and then we're in the age of censorship too. And you have other people that don't want to have discussions and censoring others.
Yeah.
We're in this really radical change about to happen in society. That it's been happening.
It's really interesting. It is kind of like a crux moment for us all. I think that people have said, well, when should I start to learn mindfulness? I think the best time to learn is with what's most challenging for you. Instead of trying to be safe, I think we need to be uncomfortable with ourselves. And uncomfortable with, face those uncomfortable moments we have with others instead of trying to run away or cancel somebody else out.
Yeah.
Let's open up, right? Let's listen, and let's create a connection, a dialogue with others, not a discussion. It's funny.
Be humble. Be humble. Who are you? Who am I to tell somebody they are wrong? Who the heck am I to know if I'm right about anything?
Well, there's a
Who the
wisdom.
heck am I?
Yeah, I mean, there's a real wisdom in that, and having that sense of humility and being able to go to that place. So I think there's a lot of hope. I think shows like this are important for people to get some new ways of looking at things, right? And that we need to start being able to reflect and use our attention to look at the good things and look at the good things of people, and also use our attention to reflect inwardly. And kind of, look at, what kind of person am I? Is this the kind of person I want to be, right? With my family or with my partner or whatever. And that kind of reflection is something I think we're losing that ability to go within.
We're building. Remember how I talked about, like, it took me to realize from having the past life experience, especially, is how much we build this facade of I'm this person. Well, I think that's what social media is doing.
Yeah.
Because now you're building in more and more. I identify with this. And that's why politics has gotten so ugly, because it's not anymore about a discussion about what we can do as a society together and have disagreements and what is the best way forward.
Yeah.
It's more like I identify with this set of beliefs and our set of beliefs are right. It becomes a religion and identify. This is my, I can't let go of it because it's my identity. And that goes for both sides.
Absolutely. It becomes a religion, becomes an identity. And, we lose the sense of the humanity of the other person. We go into a judgmental place, right or wrong, black and white, all or none thinking, right? And we forget what it's like to really get to know somebody.
Be human.
God, to take, you meet a new person. Think about this. How long does, you don't know somebody immediately. We're so complex. Every person has a life history. So think about just how we can start. I mean, I've really enjoyed that you've shared about yourself today, because that's how do I get to know somebody if they don't share some of their life history, right? But if I just immediately go, oh, you don't agree with this, and I do, so you're bad, and it's like I'm missing out on who you really are.
The best experience is getting to know people. I tell people, people always go to me, oh, I don't know how you work retail and deal with customers and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I get some Karens. I get some rude customers once in a while, but that's a small percentage. I actually enjoy the customer service part. I enjoy meeting new people. I wish I didn't have to just sell them clothes. I could talk to them and get to know more about every single person I meet.
Yeah.
You know, because I like meeting new people. I'm also a little at the same time, I'm the Gemini that I am. I have the other side of me that's agoraphobic and doesn't want to leave my house. But in the end, I do enjoy meeting new people. That's why I do this show. I mean, I have open phone lines. Speaking of, plug open phone lines, guys. Call in if you want to join the conversation. But I enjoy talking and meeting new people. Gavin gave me a list of questions to ask. I apologize. I don't do it that way.
Oh no, we don't need to. Gavin, by the way, says hi, and he says he just
awesome.
loves you and. That was all I needed to hear. He's a great guy.
But he's all the publicists do give me like lists of questions, and I read them, and it gives me a direction. But I have a conversation with people. You know, like we just sat down to have coffee together, and let's talk.
I love it.
Have some coffee, talk amongst yourselves, people. You know, but that's how that's why I enjoy doing the show. Is getting I don't get to travel. I have 2 kids, and this is my way of getting to have my socialization is to talk to you through the internet. So like I said, technology is great. We get to do this and talk,
Absolutely.
but I really fear of our future of being, we're putting ourselves in a real bad spot as a society where we're headed with this technology. It's a tool that is being used in somewhat the wrong way. I don't know what the fix is either. I don't know what to tell people the fix is at all. Because I'm as guilty as using it as to advertise for social media. I share pictures of my kids with my family on Facebook and friends. I do that stuff. But only way I see it changing is as a society we finally say, I am just sick of this. Like, let it go. Let all this go, and just look at that person you judged because they have a different view of you, and let go of your disagreement. Who are they? Get to know them. Maybe you don't agree. But this is what I try to teach my kids. I tell them.
Yeah, that's a very enlightened way of looking at it, and if we could do that, I'm glad you're sharing that with your kids. Now, do your kids, they spend a lot of time with friends, or are they on the gaming on the computer? What's their?
Yes. Oh yeah, I have my oldest son wants to make games for a living. I mean, like he's totally into the gaming world. I monitor it, and yes, I let him do some stuff parents wouldn't. But he's a very mature 11-year-old, very empathetic and insightful.
And he knows that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but him, and then my 7-year-old, he's doing martial arts, which I totally am proud of. He's totally into it, and he's a total different personality. You want to, here's a weird story for you with my 7-year-old. When you talk about future and past and lives, I've told this story. Everybody hears my experiences on the show, but it was the last day I was really going to be staying at my parents' house, and I was going to be leaving to move in with my wife. We were getting married, and it's middle of the day, and I'm sitting on the couch, and this is the other time in my life I felt that same force, that compassion, that overwhelming feeling of something immensely more powerful than me and everything else, like some great connection to some power. I felt it sitting there on my couch. I just, that overwhelming feeling of no judgment, total love, nothing to be scared of. And I look and I see this translucent boy walking up to me through my parents' living room, smiling at me. And I wasn't scared. My parents' house wasn't haunted, and I wasn't scared of this. I knew this boy. How, I don't know. But I felt just the immense love and compassion. The only other time I felt something like that was really that time I was saved from the shadow entity. Fast forward to, 13 years later, my wife we already had our first son, Dean, but we got Liam. And when they brought him out and laid him next to my wife's face, he smiled. I took a picture of it. And the moment I saw that smile, I knew that was the boy I saw in my living room. And as he's getting older, he's turned 7 on the 31st of January. Or 29th, sorry, I said the wrong birthday. Jeez, 29th of January was his 7th birthday. He is that boy I saw him in my parents' living room. They say kids. He told my wife he chose us. I mean,
I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we choose, even if it's difficult, that we have some lesson to learn, right? That we choose whatever situation.
Isn't it? That's really hard to tell to people that have very abusive parents.
Oh yeah.
Why would I choose them? You know, it's just the same thing with past lives. Like, it's hard concept. I have Chris Lee that I have on here, does a past life regression. His wife is a medium, Debbie Anderson, wonderful people. But it gets into an uncomfortable conversation when they talk about past lives, because they will say their past life was, you know, their husband and wife now, but in a past life, he was her father and she was his daughter. People are like, oh, what the heck? We have to, like, there's something beyond these social constructs, something that goes beyond that with our spirits and lives and our connections to people that goes much deeper, and we have to let go of these ideas and judgments. You know, it's hard. You know, they don't care. They openly, you know, talk about this experience. It's no big deal. But people don't understand that our connections to people could be way different than we could ever know.
Yeah, and yeah, I wouldn't underestimate that trauma has in it the seeds of spiritual initiation. And sometimes and I think that's what happened to me when I had a very traumatic background and childhood. And so I had that major depressive disorder in my early 20s. And I think it really was, when I look back now, when I think of what happened, I started to have those different visions and things happen to me, that it was a spiritual initiation for me of a kind. And so it put me on a different path. And I'm really, I feel blessed, Jason, that the things that have happened to me have happened that I couldn't have predicted. I didn't know my life would go in this direction, but but it makes sense in a way. It's kind of funny, you look back, like even you with doing this show and with the experiences in your life. Did you see this development happening for you? Was this something you could have predicted?
Well, I mean, I should have. I really should have. But I was in high school and early 20s. I was a musician, so I got really familiar with sound equipment. I got really familiar with sound equipment and everything. And a lot of the songs you hear is my bumper music stuff I wrote. Towards the end, before I stopped writing music, and then all these songs ended up becoming the bumper music. And I was a big Art Bell fan. And I also went to school for film and TV, and did in high school did TV production as my advanced class, whatever I was doing, extracurricular, whatever. I mean, I was into all these things, but I never pictured myself doing a show or doing this. And then one day it really hit me to do this, I guess, because I felt I had to. I had lost my grandmother, who I was really close to Alzheimer's. And I had a young son, and I was like that 30-year-old early midlife crisis kind of thing, And I'm like, I need a way. I can't travel. I used to always think I was going to travel and do all these things, and then as my son was born, I kind of faced some anxiety and fears that I never had as a 20-year-old. I was very reckless. Now I'm like fearful of everything. I'm not gonna get into all that, but I was like, I need to deal with these emotions and this stress, and I can't. I have all this interest in the paranormal and all this stuff and weird in my life. I can't just talk to people at my work about this. I have my friends now are off on doing their family things, so I started the show, and I wanted to have a way to connect with other people that are having these experiences, because I feel like so many people go through life and they don't talk or have any interest in this, and it amazes me how.
Well, it's funny because I'm really connecting and relating to what you're saying, because in the psychotherapy world, I wouldn't be saying a lot of the things that I'm saying here about my experience or what I shared. And that was a great thing about Travelers. I guess I had an avenue for it. I had a way to express that and to get it out there in a way that I thought also could help, enrich people's lives. But and say, hey, this is normal. This is okay, right? And we need to accept it. We need in the mental health field to stop, just prescribing and diagnosing people all the time. Though I think there's, is a reason for using medication. It can be helpful. Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. A lot of times you do both at the same time, but
it's overused. I'm sorry. I'll just say it. My wife has medication she takes. She's trying to get off of it after many years of use because she's worried about its long-term effects. Yeah. But it did help. I mean, we were at a point early in our marriage where she would have blackout rages, like emotional blackout rages. And I had to stop and say, I love you, but if you don't seek help for this, we are not going to make it. because I'm the totally opposite person. Like I'm the calm, chill person, like she's the one who like, don't piss her off, but at that time it was like really bad, and she got help, and there was a drug that helped. But now I worry about the long-term side effects of it with memory and stuff like that. We've read now years later. So we're trying to find ways to get her off and move her, that she can still be balanced and right. So I feel it did help, but at the same time now she's totally on it, addicted to it in a sense. She's afraid to come off of it totally because she has tried and she does have these blow up moments. I'm like, it's all right. It's nothing like it was when you didn't have to get help. Yeah, you're better. You are better. You realize what you're doing. You're conscious of it.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with a lady. If I could tell you a story for a moment, worked with a lady who came to me. And she had depression in her family when she said, I'm just depressed. It's in my family. There's nothing I can do about it. Her grandmother was institutionalized. One of her parents, I think, had committed suicide. And she'd been on medication since she was in grade school, And so as I started to work with her, I gave her a lot of tools. And that's one thing I try to do really in all my nonfiction books, provide tools for people that they can use, help them manage their emotions better, help them start to understand, make friends with their mind, for example, right?
Yeah.
Get a little less reactive, start to react, respond to things in a new way, and to heal, to really find healing. And so as we started to work, she's like, started to do really well. And she's like, I want to go off this medication. And I was like, well, just, I'm not a prescriber. So I said, talk to your prescriber and make sure you do it slowly. But she tried to go too quickly. It didn't work.
Right.
And so I went back and we just said, let's just work on the tools and everything. And then she very slowly titrated with the help of this, with this other doctor. And finally, she actually was able to go off and her story changed. That's what was so cool to me. The story of where it started out was, I'm a depressive person. There's nothing to do about it. Changed into, I have depressive symptoms that I know how to manage using these different coping skills and coping tools. So it was a beautiful transformation, and where she had a sense of self-efficacy, like I can do this, a belief in herself, but she was backed up by the skills, So I see that a lot. So I hope that people don't, and I see where people grab on to that diagnosis. Oh, I have.
It becomes an identity.
That's it. It becomes their identity. In the eating disorder clinic, I had people who, when I worked with, and as they started to get better, they'd have this horrible fears, like, well, who would I be without my eating disorder?
Right.
Yeah.
I've always been. Remember the Celestine prophecy? I had a hate-love relationship with that book series. Like, there's so many things I loved about it, and so many things I hated. I hated the whole, you're a poor me, you're this, because it does point out things that people are, like psychologically and the way we interact. But I hate boxing people in it because you don't have to be that. You don't have to be that. You don't have to be a poor me. You don't have to be, and then there are people that it does point out what the relationships are good. The author does a really good job of pointing out how we interact.
Yeah, how we have certain mindsets. Yeah.
But I hated it. It made it almost like a prognosis for everybody. When I think most people are these things after years of interaction and way they just learn how to react to people. We talk about psychic vampires. There are people out there who feed off of your energy with, the way they get something out of you emotionally. There's a great comedy show called What We Do in the Shadows. And actually, one of the it's about vampires.
I don't think I've seen that.
It's on Hulu, but one of the vampires is not like your normal vampire. He's a psychic vampire. And he literally does things to drain people's energy through conversation.
Oh, that sounds funny.
Yeah, it is hilarious, but it's so true. It's so true because people do this. Yeah. I think, and then they let he's been around for like 100 years or whatever, and somebody introduces him to the internet, and he's like online trolling people, and I'm like, this is such a statement. This character that's this psychic vampire to what we are as a society, what people are doing. We are trying to get this amygdala reaction online and get emotional reactions out of other people's. That's why there are online trolls. That's why there's a name for them, because these people are feeding off of these negative reactions they get by saying outlandish things or horrible things to other people. There's this part of somebody's psyche that, or there's people that do a bunch of like, my life's horrible and all, and every post is about that. It's all different ways of people reacting to the worst of their emotional state. It's bringing out the worst in people is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost like a virus, isn't it? We just like you catch a cold from somebody, you can catch a virus. You can catch an emotional virus from somebody, or some of these toxic vampires that you're talking about. We can catch that, and so you have to kind of be aware of that. Notice when you're being pulled in, right?
Or when you're doing it yourself, because you could be the person doing it.
And surround yourself with people who don't have that negative energy. Right.
Yeah, I have had cut people out because of that.
The people we associate with is so important, critical to our health. There have been studies that show that the people we're around and having healthy relationships we can live longer. In fact, I think that if you don't have a healthy relationship in your life, that's as bad for you as like being a chronic smoker, an alcoholic, and being obese.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm lucky in life to have have my wife in the relationship we did. I thank myself every day that I'm lucky. If I have friends who've gone through horrible divorces and or alone, didn't get married. I feel very lucky to have the relationship I do. It's not perfect, but I know I'm with somebody who we both know each other very well. We're honest with each other, and that you can't buy that for $1 billion.
That's a blessing. Yeah, that's a real blessing. You can find that.
Yeah, and I feel so bad for so many people that are out there alone. They feel alone. They don't have that relationship with somebody. They might have friends and stuff. People that are close to them that helps. But in the end, they just want that really personal interconnection with somebody, and not everybody gets that.
No.
I mean, and China's facing that right now. They have a bunch of single men because they have not enough women. And I think that's what's causing so much problems in their society.
Oh, yeah. It's funny, and some people who've read Travelers have told me that's really like a love story, a relationship story, and the psychiatrist and his wife Beth, and what happens to them, and the kind of trials they go through. In order, but they really love each other, and even though they've had this great loss of their daughter, they're searching for a way to kind of how can we still make this work?
Yeah,
and relationships are going to have you're going to have ups, and it's like a roller coaster in some ways. You're going to have ups and downs.
It's part of the ride. You bought the ticket. It's not. I tell that to young couples. I tell this to young people that are getting married that I work with and that are getting newlyweds. And then I said, and they're telling me about their so and so did this. And oh my God, I'm like, you had all that lovey-dovey thing that led you up to this moment to get together and decide to get married. That's great, but marriage is work. There's compromise and there's life and things you have to build and agree upon. And until you both understand that, it's going to be very rocky. And if you don't understand that at some point, you probably won't last. I'm not a marriage expert. Our marriage isn't perfect, but it's lasted 19 years. You know what I'm saying? You have to get to some point in your life where you realize that, the person's not there to fulfill the hole in your soul. A lot of people think that's what it's about. It's not. It's not that. They're not there to fulfill the hole in your soul. They're there to share an experience with you. And and you have to be able to compromise and work together. Marriage is work. Okay.
Well, and with your part, I think the other thing about marriage is you get to work with your shadow, right? Your dark side, and how and
you mirror each other,
and you mirror each other, right? And you have somebody here who really probably nobody other than your partner knows your dark side, your shadow side, what the part that you struggle with, and that that's a spiritual practice too. That's a spiritual path, is working with that material, And so that, that can be a very powerful experience to share that with somebody.
Like I said, not everybody gets to have that, share that experience, but they might have somebody else in their life they get close enough to. It doesn't have to be your romantic partner.
Right.
That's the thing. People in this world would be so much different if we did start doing more listening to each other and less judging and more compassion.
The interesting thing, the word discussion comes from the word percussion, which is like to bang on something. Like a discussion is you're banging on somebody's head, trying to prove to them, oh, this is, I've got the right way here. But there's another word called dialogue. That means through word. And when you're in dialogue with somebody, if you think about that, am I banging somebody over the head or am I in dialogue? And a dialogue is a mutual search for truth with another person. Isn't that a beautiful idea that we can search together and experience and learn something new together, and maybe look at a new view, a new perspective, right? And that it can be collaborative.
For me, one of the things I brought up in your book too, your book does have a lot to do with grief too. I want to get into that. We're going to be going to commercial break here, and I want to cover that in the last half hour. Is a little bit about dealing with grief. I've always had trouble talking to other people who are going through grief, and I'm ashamed of that. I want to be able to help people, a friend, family, or a stranger that's going through grief. But it's hard to talk to somebody. You don't want to say the cliche things. It's hard to deal with some of the grief. Your character in the book is dealing with the grief of loss of a child. That's my worst nightmare. When you describe that, his wife keeps the room untouched, it brings back to the reason why I didn't want to have children for so long. Was when I was in kindergarten, I had a girl that lived next to me, Crystal. She died in a car accident.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually had a whole kind of like I see dead people moment where I was in a little fort I made after she died, and I saw her in there. It freaked me out. But what really freaked me out was her parents. They left her bike right where it was left. They left her room completely untouched.
Yeah.
And I would see the thing that haunts me to this day, more than once, and one time especially, I saw her mom just at the screen door of their trailer. We lived in a trailer park, just staring like a ghost out the door, screen door, like she's waiting for her daughter to come home.
Oh, yeah.
And it went on for years where that bike just never moved. And I was told the room was never changed. And I think the parents eventually moved out, got divorced. That scarred me as a kid. I always said, I don't want to have children. I don't want to ever suffer what they are suffering.
Well, that was a traumatic thing for you to go through, was to lose that friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was my really first realization that I could die. But, as I got older, I didn't care if I died. I smoked, chain smoked. I did drugs. I did stupid things in my, teens and 20s. I didn't care. I was very reckless. Now, I'm not like that now. But having my son brought back the survival fear, not because I care about myself. I don't want anything to happen to them. And I don't want anything to happen to me to separate myself from them, because I had a biological father that took off and didn't care about me. And I always swore if I had kids, I would always be a part of their life. So I have the fear now again about losing my life. And now I have a fear of protecting them and something happening to them. It brought in this whole panic attacks, anxiety in my life I had to come to terms with and deal with. How to let go of this fear. I'm still dealing with it. I don't want to be the overprotective parent. I want my kids to live their life.
I have to tell you, Jason, that's not, that's kind of normal for a lot of parents to experience that kind of fear and that worry. I worked with a lady. She would have these horrible, anxiety and panic attacks about things happening to her kids all the time. Yeah, that's why she came to see me. She's driving to the soccer field. She'd imagine her kid falling down.
Yes. I'm all the time
nails
there.
Picking up that pokes through his eye. It's all in her head. And she would go into these panics, and then, it was affecting her kids. She didn't want them to leave the home, and they weren't. And at the same time, she was like, "Oh, wait, I want them to have a normal life and enjoy themselves." But, so that's really can be very debilitating, that kind of thing. It's very real.
I had to think about where is this when it started happening. These panic attacks when my first son was born. I had to really think about where it came to me, and I thought back to my losing that childhood friend and seeing that mother. It hit me one night, thinking about after I had a panic attack, what is going on here? And I thought, I've been scarred from this since my childhood, because I remember as a little kid seeing that and being haunted by it. And like, I don't want to suffer what there is. I can't imagine a worse hell than what I saw in that woman's face.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I want my kids to live their life, so I try to be mindful of it when I do it. Like, I mean, even taking a field trip with my son. Like, we had to drive a couple hours drive to, you know, that we're near Chicago. There's that Knights thing where they have the Knights do the jousting and all that. I can't remember, Renaissance or whatever.
Yeah,
we had that for a field trip, and I had to drive him up there. You don't know the anxiety I had having him in a car, driving that far. I don't like to drive far. I have anxiety, and I know it comes from the idea that my childhood friend died in this car wreck. And I hate driving. I've always hated driving. I know it goes back to that. And now that I have my kid in a car, driving on a 2-hour drive, we listened to Art Bell, old Art Bell episodes on the way up there. And my kid loved it. He was the first time he heard Art Bell. We were listening to Bigfoot episode, you know, so it was really a body. And afterwards, I was like, I got myself to let go of it. We had such an awesome time, just me and him, no little brother there to get in the way. We hadn't had that time together. It was awesome. I'm glad I did it. But man, I almost didn't because of that anxiety and fear. And just recently we went on a trip to Florida, and all that anxiety came back because I got to take a long road trip down to Florida with my kids, our first family vacation, 15 years. You know, like these kids had never gone on a road trip like this because your daddy's totally worried and totally has anxiety about being on the road with you guys because something might happen, you know? I don't want to live in that kind of fear. That's the things I've been dealing with in my life to try to overcome, and that anxiety and fear, you know, of those situations. We got to go to commercial break, and we got a half an hour left. I would like, you know, what we didn't even get into tonight is some of your experiences of out of body. I'd like to hear a little bit more because I had mine were very traumatic, but I've had a lot of people on here about out of body experiences, and it's a life changing theme for most people. I'd love to hear how it affected you. We're going to go to commercial break, guys. Phone lines will come back when we come back from this commercial break. We'll open them back up. All right, guys, we're right back. Short commercial break.
Intercepted the transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an Apex Studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come
Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Heat 'em up. Do, re, be gone.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID 00JBland00 or JBland Paranormal Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest has been Donald Altman. He's the author of Travelers. It is a fiction book. He's written 20 other books, nonfiction. He's a psychotherapist, but Travelers is a fiction book, but it brings you into the world of being a psychotherapist and all these other concepts that we haven't even got to touch even remotely into yet, is like out-of-body experiences or biolocation, telepathy. These are concepts that are in this book that I truly love the way he brings you into this world, but introduces these concepts of things I've experienced. And I think a lot of you that watch the show have experienced. The phone lines are now open. If you want to call in, if you had a out-of-body experience, we'd love to hear about it. We have a half an hour left, but call in, join this conversation. But let's get back to our guest. All right. Oop, make sure you're unmuted. There you go. All right. So, Donald, we talked about a lot of the, some experiences, like you had the energy flow come through you. You mentioned you had out-of-body experiences. I had mine, which were very horrendous, but at the time, but later on, it made me realize if mine can be ripped out of my body, there's another part of me that's not my body, that I have a soul or something that goes on beyond the body. It was the later on, after the traumatic part, a realization. How did this happen for you for having out-of-body experiences?
Well, again, it happened at that time when I was really experiencing intense depression and this incredible heaviness. And
I was depressed then too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I did. Yeah, well, that's that spiritual initiation actually that I think is, is misunderstood. I mean, I know a guy who had this happen to him, and he was, he was committed for a period of time. He got out. His family didn't believe that there was anything other than he was hallucinating or whatever. But he had gone to this monastery, and a monk said, "You're having a spiritual awakening experience." Now, that may not be the case with everybody, but I think what happens is when we have these experiences, how do you put them in a context? How do you make sense of them is really important. Or are they making you ineffective in dealing with your everyday reality, right? I mean, if these things are coming through it's to such an extent that you can't live your life, then there's a real problem, right? And then and that's where you probably need some medication or some other kind of help. But if it's something that happens as a release valve, which I think is what happens, what I'm hearing happen to you and happen to me.
Right.
And I think happens to a lot of people, where it's a release valve almost, and you get this other view, you get connected to this other realm of reality. If you can take an open look at it, and not get wrapped up in like, oh, what is this? Am I crazy? Why is this happening to me? But just allow yourself to watch it again with a sense of curiosity and openness. When it happened to me, I had a friend who'd done a lot of spiritual work, and I asked him, I said, because a couple of times I'd had some feeling of a negative energy, and it frightened me.
Yeah.
When I went into that state, and he said, well, just picture a white light around yourself.
So that's what happened to me when I got rid of the negative thing. The room was filled with a white light, a bright
beautiful
white light.
Yeah. And then that's the advice he gave me. So, and that's what I would do. And that would always dispel that negative energy. But most of the time, I'd have this burst of this energy. And I got to play with it because it happened several times. I would start to notice it was, kind of start in the back of my head and kind of spread around to the front, and then just was expansive. And at that time, I'd feel my body lifting up. And I could see myself going to different places I'd never been before, but actually see myself moving through walls and, or just shooting up into space. I mean, there was almost unlimited. I did, like I say, this happened enough where I was able to just try to see where would this take me, or how could I experiment with it. But each time it left me with a very calm, peaceful feeling. I have to say that. I didn't attach to the experience or wonder, well, where am I now? I just allowed myself to go with it. And the feeling of flying was really amazing. And that's also part of the book. But the feeling was just, as I'm sure you experience, or anyone who does this experiences, it's an amazing experience. But, I think whatever the visions that we have, and we can have all kinds of things. And it's funny, even as I've gotten older, I've experienced other kinds of, and I don't know why they occur. I've even had, about a year ago, dual streams of consciousness at the same time. It was like being in two places simultaneously. I remember I'd taken, my wife and I had gone to take a walk in this beautiful park, and all of a sudden, this is happening. And I tried to describe to her what was happening, but she later told me, said, you really didn't make good sense. Right? Because I think I was in these two places, but I have known enough not to get afraid when this happens, but to just kind of say, wow, this is pretty amazing, and to allow myself to experience it. when I got home, when I said I drove to the park on the way back, I gave her the keys. I said, I think you better drive. We got back home, and I was still experiencing it, so I lied down on the grass, and I thought grounding myself would dissipate, and it did.
Right.
So I think what's important in any of these experiences is don't define yourself by it. The mind is amazing in what its capability is and how we can experience things. And so I think we shouldn't be so fast to pathologize. Again, I don't want to sound like a recorder, but to pathologize anybody because they're experiencing a different reality. I think that, again, the key is, how do you make sense of it? What's the context you put it in? And then can you go ahead and be effective in your life? If it's impeding you, then that's where the problem is, right? I don't think these experiences are meant to be more than glimpses, right? That we don't.
They're reminders that we're more than this physical body.
Absolutely. They're reminders to us about that we're spiritual beings, right? And to connect us with that and to let us see that view that when we leave here, we're we're in a transitory place and we move on, right?
Yeah.
That the fact that we can even experience this is just amazing. And again, it's a gift that we can do it. But again, not to judge it in any kind of a way, but just to allow yourself to say, okay, I had this happen. Now, how can I be a better person today in my life? So what really matters, right, is how you live your life. You could have all the vision in the world, doesn't make you better than anyone else.
Right.
It's meant, I think, to educate us and to help us move forward. But then, we live our life by the actions that we do and how we treat other people, and that's the important thing.
I think I love having people on with near-death experiences because a lot of times they share a lot of the same themes of these life reviews.
Well, what's funny, one time this happened to me where I was going into this, I called it the buzz state because it was a vibration. Yeah. And I went into that state and my life flashed before my eyes. Thousands of images of my entire life. And as it was happening, I was just shocked. I was stunned by what I was seeing. And it got to the end and it repeated in the exact identical sequence, which I couldn't believe. And I kind of wonder, I said, wow, is that what it's like? I've heard about when people die and their life flashes. This is what I had seen. Yeah. But the fact that it could repeat in the identical sequence, thousands of just images flashing before my mind's eye, it was kind of shocking to me. Because it was beyond my rational ability to comprehend it. Yeah.
What I've heard from a lot of people I've had on with near-death experiences, though, is that they get to feel how the other person felt in an interaction from their past.
Interesting.
So it like gives you review your life, but you're getting perspective of how your interactions affected others.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like It's a Wonderful Life when he thinks the world would be better off without him, and he finds out. This is how he affected everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's
cool.
Yeah. I always love the movie Defending Your Life. I don't think that's what the afterlife's like, but I don't know if you ever seen Albert Brooks.
Albert Brooks, yeah.
Yeah, I always love that movie because he has to have a lawyer in the afterlife to defend all these things. But at the same time, you realize what they're trying to teach him is or the reviewing of his life is all the things he did and acted out of fear. And that's what they were trying to get him over is stop making your actions about because you're afraid. To get over his fear. That was his life lesson. In the end, he goes after I can't remember the actress's name, but he goes off and defies them, and that's the end of the movie. Whatever, spoiler. But saying it's about them getting over their fear. It wasn't really about judging the things he did in his life. It was more about why did you react this way? You're still living in fear. You still have lessons to learn. I do feel that is what life is that we are in this.
Yeah.
school of learning, and I sometimes I have to say to myself, okay, stop reacting to this. What am I supposed to learn from this that's happening right now?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be learning? I can't always make myself do that. I react emotionally just like everybody else.
Yeah,
But sometimes I try to get myself to stop and go, what can I learn from this?
That's an important question. It really is. It's interesting. One time, it was some years after I first had that experience, was no longer struggling with depression or anything, and I got to know somebody who was a neurologist, and I shared with them. I said, "What if somebody had this?" I didn't say it was me. So, "What if somebody had this? How would you treat that? What would you say?" And the response was, "Well, they're having epileptic seizures, and they need to go on drugs immediately or something." But it's not understood,
right?
Well,
that's the thing, though. It's like that's why I love it in your book. Your character's struggling with this. With the character Mason, his client, who literally I don't want to give your story away, but it's earlier in the story. But he sees stuff he shouldn't know, and the doctor, his brain is befuddled to the point of he's like, I don't know, he's like stunned in silence. Can't even react.
He goes into
a trance.
Kind of cataleptic fit. He just totally
he's having the epileptic seizure from it. But I love that part of the book because he's faced with this unknown that's just it's not explainable under his rational means. Like he has to try to be honest with his patient and hear them. They had this experience. You can't deny it, but he has no words for it. He has nothing to say or to he stays up all night like reading up like, oh, this could be what's the explanation? like the answer's simple, stupid. he was out of his body and saw everything.
Yeah. I mean, at one point, his client, that young man, the patient does something that he can't understand, and he even gets angry.
Yeah.
And then he feels very bad. It's like, oh my God, how did I discount this person's experience? And
because the character is a compassionate person, it wants to help. He's ashamed of himself for his reaction. I love that.
Yeah, his rationality has such a hold on him, right? Such a grip.
You see that in the universities and academia.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is the reaction, though. That's why you get that reaction, just like that character's reaction. They can't explain it; it's threatening.
Yeah, so
everything
he has to go through a number of different experiences where he gets to the point where he's ready, right? And I don't want to give anything away there, but one of the things that happened, I got to tell you this because this blew my mind. You talk about synchronicity or things happening. So I'd already written the book, and I don't know if you got to the point in the book where he's being taken on this almost like a shamanic journey by this traveler, and he's in this wilderness area, and he has this fall. This accident happens, and he months later. And when I wrote that, by the way, I wrote that about a part of the park I had never been to. I just used my imagination.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm hiking this part of the park like 6 months after I wrote the book with my wife, and I fall. And I had the same injuries. I fell in the same place that my character fell. I sustained the same injuries that he had. And thankfully, my wife was there to help me get out because I was in a bad way. Now, the character didn't have that, benefit.
Yeah.
And then as I was leaving, I started looking around all the landmarks like, oh my God, this is just what I wrote. I've never been here. This was the north end of the park. I've been to the south end. And it just, amazing to me.
Yeah, I'm a big Stephen King fan. And I swear there is certain themes throughout his books, certain little hints, like he almost precognitively knew he was going to get hit by that truck. And he's made mention of that.
Yeah.
There's little things he put, ideas and concepts, and then he gets hit by this truck and goes through this whole thing. And like he even said that he felt like he knew it.
Yeah. So I mean, it kind of the same thing here when this happened. When I wrote that, I could never have thought, wow, that's going to actually happen to me.
I mean, think how many books he wrote about killer cars. It's not just Christine. He wrote other ones, other short stories. Well, there's from a Buick 8. God, my brain's going blank. He's wrote a lot about killer cars. I mean, there's it's like he knew this was going to happen. I mean, he's going to have to go through this event that almost killed him. It was tragic. And we almost lost Stephen King. You know,
I think that's the kind of the mystery of this kind of thing when you write this. There's the unconscious working through you.
Yeah.
And I
said, I'm a big Stephen King book. He in his book, he describes writing, the creative process for him is like uncovering a fossil. It's already there. The story's already there. You just have to take a light brush to it and get
it. It's a nice way to describe it. Yeah. There were times when I just had to get out of my own way. I was trying to push my own mental ideas about what should happen, or at one point the character is taken on a journey to find his spirit animal, and and I'm thinking to myself, oh, it should be a tiger or some powerful animal, and it just wasn't working. And I said, you know what, I've got to step back and just let my unconscious do this. And so I went and meditated, took some walks, and all of a sudden, it, boom, came into my head. I was like, that can't be. Right? It just, no, that can't be. But it worked. And, but that was part of the magic for me, I think, was allowing that to come through. It's almost like channeling in a way.
I really think it is. I mean, look at, you got the Titan, where the guy wrote a book about a ship that sinks just like the Titanic, 18 years before the Titanic or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of people when they're in that creative state of writing, predicting something, happening in a sense. They touch into or tap into something. I know my creative stuff would try to write stuff. I'd be like, when I was a little kid, I wrote a book. One of the first stories I ever wrote when I was a little kid is I drew out there was a dinosaur park where they were going to grow dinosaurs. Steven Spielberg owes me money on this thing. It was before Jurassic Park. Like, I even had an idea of people living in this virtual world where they didn't know it was real. Then The Matrix comes out. I'm like, God dang it. My wife jokes because I'll tell her about a story idea I have, and then we'll watch a preview. It goes, that's your story idea. So like, you got $1 million ideas. You just need to frickin' write them out.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit, if we could, about grief.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you'd mentioned that, and I think grief is very much stigmatized in a way, and people are afraid to really talk about their grief. And this whole idea like, oh, you got to get through it. You got to just, get over it, right?
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. In fact, for the first time, there's a book called the DSM. I mentioned it, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. As I mentioned in the book, the character mentions it. And so for the first time this year, they have a diagnosis for it's called prolonged grief disorder. So if your grief lasts longer than a year, something wrong with you. You've got to stigmatize that. Yeah.
A year?
A year. Can you believe that? I mean, it's caused some controversy in the field.
I bet.
A lot of people who are grief therapists think it's it's ridiculous because, I mean, who says that, there's something wrong with you? The good news, at least insurance will pay for it, right?
But maybe that's why it was pushed, is they wanted to find a way to quantify it and, insurance, you got to cover this. This person has a disorder.
Yeah. But at least, but it is stigmatizing. And who's to say that, grief isn't like a letter of caring and love for the person you've lost. And it could last a lifetime in that way. You have an understanding of Buddhist teachings, and of course I do. And in the Buddhist perspective, attachment is what causes, suffering and pain in life. But I think there's also attachment that we need, right? When you lose somebody,
you can't be disattached.
You can't be just, or get unattached as a means of escaping the pain. You have to confront it. You have to move on, but at the same time, I think we can get connected between beyond time and space. And I'll share. I talked with a guy who is a grief coach, and he lost his daughter, just like in my story. and he said that he gets signs of his daughter. In fact, some of the signs have to do with birds, just like I don't want to give anything away that's in Travelers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting to me. It's like, wow. I mean,
we've talked about that a lot on this show, of people experiencing things through signs through animals, especially birds.
Signs and well, my mother.
I've had that experience too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my mother, she died at 99. She had a great life, long life. And she was like a spiritual guide to me in a lot of ways, and especially for my creative work, she was very encouraging. And when she died, I kept waiting for her. I want to have a dream. I want to connect with her in some way. Nothing happened. And then one day, it was a few months later, I had this, it wasn't a dream, Jason. It was like a vivid picture of her that I saw, and I was with her, and she didn't speak, but it was her. And she was smiling, and she was letting me know she was okay. And it was one of these things where I kind of woke up and I came into consciousness, was lying in bed, and I was like, whoa, that wasn't a dream. And then after that time, and I think this is something I would, think people could do. A couple times when I wished I could have asked her or talked to her about a couple of things, but I did. I put it out to her, and I just sensed the body. And the answer came instantly, and I knew it was her answer to me. I picked it up through the body. I think that's one of the beautiful things about mindfulness is it gets us into sensing through the body, which I think as children, we have a great ability to do that, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes we get away from that, but I think it's very wonderful if you could just take a breath in, feel that breath come into the body. Just notice. Imagine breathing all the way down your body, down your legs and into the soles, all the way down to the toes, right? And then exhaling. But just let yourself be embodied with this one breath, and then ask a question, maybe of that loved one or whatever you would like to know, and just feel in. Allow yourself to notice. So a lot again is about attention but I think connecting with the body is very powerful. I even have something that is in the book, and is not meant as for it's something that the psychiatrist has a supervisor, and she guides him through something which subverts the mind and has him experience something in the body, and it's amazing. I mean, I have just occasionally used it with clients, but it's something I developed. It's actually in the book. Somebody could actually try that. But I think the main point is, how can we drop out of the mind and get into the body? Because the body can tell us things that we can't experience any other way.
It was like Buddhists.
Have you done anything like that?
Well, what I think of is like when I got into Buddhism and meditation, it tries to take you out of your headspace, focus on the navel, like the other mind. It tries to get you to be in the body and be aware of that. And I think mindfulness in itself, all these things we talk about on this show, the experiences that I've had, you've had, so many people are having these experiences, but they don't realize it. Because they're not mindful of what's going on around them in their body or their own thoughts or anything. They don't realize an action they might have taken might have been influenced from a loved one that's communicating with them. I think we're in constant, the people we love that we missed, we're grieving over are with us. I think they don't come through like when we want them to, like come to me in a dream or that. I get that what people call, I try to ask them to come to me with their dream. Sometimes I think our grief is too strong for them to connect. It pushes them away. What Dreams May Come is one of my favorite movies. And in that, Robin Williams is dead and his wife's still alive. And they tell him, his guide or whatever, I don't get into spoilers on that, but tells him, she feels you. You're making her misery worse because your presence, she's feeling it, and it's making her go to this dark place. You need to back off. You need to back off. And I wonder if sometimes that's what happens in the spirit world. They need us to get to a place with our grief to be able to accept them and be able to make that communication. I honestly, people are like, oh, I think it's horrible that psychics feed off of, or mediums. They get money from people for doing readings. I know some really good mediums that have helped a lot of people because they help them start that journey of communication with their loved ones after they've left the medium. You know what I'm saying? They make them realize that person is there, and it opens them up to that idea, and it starts to get them to move with their grief and move on and still have a connection to this person. I think a lot of grief is because people feel they will betray their loved one if they move on. It's a betrayal of their memory or their love.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's very common, actually, that people feel some guilt about moving on. And I mean, and we're supposed to move on. We're supposed to continue to feel joy in life, but it doesn't mean that we still can't connect with the memory or with the spirit of that person.
I think when they realize that person's there and they know how that person would feel about them being this miserable because of them, that they wouldn't want that.
Absolutely.
That's what starts that journey to healing and moving to live your life. It's not that you're ever never. That's what I think is the stupidest thing about the 1 year thing is that you can live your life, you can have good moments and live a happy life, but still grieve. Still, there's always going to be a part of you that's always going to have this missing part that's not there anymore.
And this can last a lifetime, and it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I think that just needs, again, judgment. Like putting people in boxes, like, oh, you have a grieving disorder. No, I'm a living person. I'm a human being that's living life.
Right.
Call it a disorder. I call it life.
What is depression is, it's kind of like Christian Murray, who was a great teacher in the last century, said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
God. And that's why I think this world could be a lot better with the stuff you're talking about in this book, Travelers. We got to end the show here, but is there going to be a sequel?
Oh,
Do you think you might write another book?
I've been working on that. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Yes, I definitely will read that too. I'm about ready to finish your book, Travelers. Everybody can definitely check it out on Amazon, right? You can get it there.
Amazon, any of the Barnes and Noble, any of the indie bookstores can order it. You can go order it from your local bookstore if you want. And my website, mindfulpractices.com, MINDFUL practices.com, is where you can find any of my books and CDs and online courses too.
Hey, Donald, it's been an honor to have you on the show. I truly am enjoying the book. I can't wait to finish it. And I can't wait for a sequel already. I haven't finished this one yet, but I'm almost done. So I'm hoping you do get that sequel out. When you do, let me know. I'd love to have you back on the show. So many things we didn't get to talk about. Time goes by so fast here. Talk about time being an illusion, man. I want to make it speed by as watch this show.
It's been great.
Well, thank you, Donald.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it for the show. We will be back next Sunday. Hey, we made a show. No internet glitches. Yay! Oh, my God. You don't know what the last 2 weeks have been trying to do this show. The last 2 Sundays were awful. Look, I was so, praying we'd get through this, and we did. So thank you, Donald. You were excellent.
I love the bumpers. If that's your music, then it's great.
Thank you. Yes. I think everything I played tonight is stuff I wrote. Well, next week, we're going to have returning guest Colm Holland. If you don't remember, we had him on the show probably about a year ago. I can't wait to have him on. Another great conversator. And thank you, everybody who shares out the show. Keep telling your friends about Paranormal Soup, open forum where we can all talk about our weird experiences with no judgments here at all. We all are open minds here every Sunday night. And where the paranormal happens live sometimes. You never know. Thank you to everybody who donates on Patreon. $2 a month, $5 a month does help pay the bills for the show. Or you can always donate on Super Chat on YouTube. That does help pay the bills, too. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks.